Welcome to the Institute for Advanced Astonishment. Today, I have a very astonishing guest, and we're trying not to talk in private too much because the the synchronicity is just unbelievable. So right here is philosopher Randy Dible, Dible Dible, like Bible. Hello,
That's
Randy.
right. You don't call the Bible the Bibble
Except my friend
unless you're
RJ
like your
called
friend does.
it.
Right. Yeah. So don't
And
call the Bible the
Randy, you might have
don't call the Bible
watched
the Bible. So the Bible the
you might have watched this podcast, maybe seen a few. The main thrust is to help people who are seeking this advanced astonishment or mystical experience, and this is your work and what brought us together. So that's the main thing is thinking of those people out there, and so we got to try our best to keep the language for everybody, and I know you're a professor, so
Oh yeah.
you know that whole, because I love wordplay, you love wordplay, and we could play, but we want to also get to everybody, as much as possible. And big themes. There's a little the M in astonishment has a M to the third, and it just reminds me of three things, and I know the three things matter to you. One is matter and the nature of matter and reality, and what is that really? And another is maintenance, like once you maybe achieve this mystical, uh, or you notice it, yeah, how do you maintain it? How do you make it a baseline? And another is that fits with that is mind training. How do you train the mind to get to this beautiful frequency of nirvana or heaven, this heavenly beautiful frequency? So we have a lot to talk about. I'm very excited and so happy to meet you.
Yeah. You too. Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And I absolutely agree. The most important thing here is this this thing we have to share, right? This mystical whatever, right? Mystical experience, event, or mysticism, or whatever you want to call it, which has always been what true philosophy in the highest and
Yes.
deepest sense. And of course, philosophy is the highest and deepest thing, out there. It's like what you do with your friends spontaneously when you're hanging out, it's actually Miss Manners, the newspaper columnist, right? Judith Martin. People have written her asking, like, okay, so we can't talk about this and that at the dining table, but what should we do? What should we positively do? And her
Right.
answers for those kinds of questions is basically philosophy, and
Yes.
I mean, obviously, like Aristotle, Plato, like there's some really deep things to be said about what exactly is philosophy, but we all know it. It's
Yeah.
just it's that thing we do when we're like when we're hanging out, and we're like talking about the stars or whatever, how profound, how deep the universe is, or the fact that we're even here and all that kind of stuff, of course.
And you teach at St. Joseph's University, and do you teach intro to philosophy? Do you teach how many classes do you actually have a class on what we're going to talk about
Yeah.
today?
Yeah, actually. I mean,
Wow.
I have a little freedom. I've been working there since 2018. I just do one class every semester because I'm writing my dissertation. I'm a PhD student at the New School for Social Research. We'll get into all these things, all these synchronicities,
Yes.
as we go. But I've been teaching introduction classes. Invitation to Philosophy is what it's called. So I've had the freedom to, put my Upanishads and some Vedic, the Vedas in there, and as well
Beautiful.
like Plato and Aristotle, Descartes, like all the classic bases that I want to cover, and what I for myself also want to be doing every semester, to keep myself looking very closely at the texts, for myself in the original languages. I get the like deep immersion, but
Yeah.
it's the kind of stuff that you could share with, freshmen, introductory students, with people on the street.
And I think just you and I meeting like this, I usually don't talk about our stories, but this story of our connection right here, right now, I think is such a living proof of that there's only one universal consciousness,
Yeah.
because there's no way that maybe we can just start to say, I'll start. I'm
Yeah.
from Long Island. Where are you from?
I'm from San Diego, but I'm in Long Island.
You're in Long Island.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Medford, and you live in
In Patchogue.
like a minute
Patchogue.
away, maybe two
Yeah.
minutes away. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, they're
So
right next to each other. Yeah.
I grew up as a magician. I found this awe and wonder and magic, and so I became a sleight of hand guy, and I would go to Ranjo's magic shop. And do you have an interest in magic?
Yeah. I do. I do. And this has been bringing it all back for me. Um I did some magic when I was like a little kid.
Yeah.
I was a lot like you actually. I started reading this one. I just got your books, I mean, we just met. This is our first time meeting face to
Yes.
face, right? Virtually. And we just started talking over like Facebook Messenger this past week because well, I mean, so to get into it, I at the end of the summer this year, I've been doing this stuff for a while. I've been doing philosophy in this way for years. This is my long story going back to like when I was a little baby, right? I mean,
Yes.
I've been using my imagination as all kids do, and I wanted to keep that magic really, and nostalgia was one form that it takes.
Right.
And I find this in the music I love. I love Led Zeppelin,
Yeah.
and I happen to, in San Diego, right? That's where I'm from, have traveled all through the Pacific mainland side of Mexico. And I had lots of adventures there. My father is a surf photographer. We have the same name, Randy Dible. And
And you were
yeah,
here
so
in
he lived.
Guatemala, I think, when you were a child.
That's right. Actually, I just talked to him on the phone about that right now, and my mom. I called them both
Wow.
just before the podcast as preparation to get my story straight. So we did a U-turn in Guatemala. They turned us back. My dad's story was we didn't have enough money. We had like they said you don't even have $500. You can't come in here. So that was his story. My mom's story was they turned us back because there was fighting going on, and they wanted us to turn back. So I don't know, but
Yeah, they might
we
have
went
been
into
in a
Guatemala.
civil war or something during.
It was like 19. It could have been 86. It could have been 89. Somewhere
Yeah.
in there. We did a lot of traveling through Mexico, and there were like, it was about the surf. It was
Yeah.
about my dad's passion for surfing, and so we went through all the Pacific mainland side, the all the secret spots. He wrote these like big 20-page spreads in Surfer's Journal and everything, and so anyway, he's got this passion for that stuff, and we found ourselves down there, and we did a little U-turn. We had to stay at a hotel while my dad went and got more money that trip,
Right.
to get us at least to come back home, actually. So we were like really in the jungle. This is back in the 80s,
Yes.
maybe the early 90s as well. We did a lot of this kind of travel, and we saw some crazy stuff. Some intense things. So
And
I mean, that's my background.
maybe 5 or 6, or you were a little boy.
Yeah.
A little.
Yeah. Like
Baby.
5 in the States
Yeah.
is like school age. So like before I was 5, we traveled all through Mexico in the 80s. I was born in 84. I'm 40. And
That's another
and
thing. Can we do our birthdays?
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to go or do you want me to go? Either one of us could say what our birthday
Go
is.
first. You go first.
Okay. It's September 18. Yeah.
And my birthday is September 18.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, that was wild enough. Okay, but then I started reading this,
Yeah.
and I realized the two figures you're dealing with, for the most part, I mean, this is some real philosophy too here. I mean, on page 1, you're talking Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, but the two figures are the magicians.
Yes.
One is James Randi, which I happen to know a little bit about because that's my name, and I had some interest in magic, so it rang a bell when I
And
first
it's
like.
both of our names, James
Yeah.
and Randy. It's
Yeah, weird. And you're like a Vincent Price sort of character, not like by any category except, I don't know, the mysterious magician sorcerer
Yes,
type, like
yes.
this guy,
And the middle name is Vincent.
That's right. Yeah. So, and the
Yeah,
other
and
magician,
Randy and Paul Harris, right?
yeah, yeah, and I'm really enjoying the stories I'm hearing in the book here. But it turns out they have the same birthday. So I
Yes.
mean, it's just it's just piling on. It's kind of interesting, kind of funny. I mean, yeah, one can be a total skeptic about that sort of thing for sure. I mean, whatever. It's like 11/11,
Right.
that kind of thing.
When
But
when you get 10, 20 in a row and they just keep coming, and we haven't even scratched the surface yet. That was just a one
right.
week.
I mean, these are like little things interspersed in ordinary waking state, everyday life, but sometimes, especially if you're like a psychonaut or someone who has experimented with like meditation or lucid dreaming, or just experimented with their own human energy system in different ways, sometimes you can get into a state of consciousness where it's just like, oh, well, I'm having deja vu. I'm having deja vu that I'm saying that I'm having deja vu, and then hopefully you get the tunnel, and just go
Yes.
whoa, right? And
Yes.
that'll take you all the way. Or with nostalgia, feelings of nostalgia, like wow, this is so otherworldly. It's like I feel like I'm home,
Yes.
except this is so like I'm thinking of the limit of where I've ever been. As a kid, it was like the southernmost part of San Diego. I mean, I've been all
Right.
through Mexico too, but I don't know. There's certain like thought experiments, certain like thoughts
Yes.
you have. They don't have to be thought experiments. They're just like certain thoughts or ways of thinking or places you put your mind, your attention, and then yeah, meditation. But there's a lot of interesting little clues, and when you tap into them, you start finding the universal system of truth, and you
Right.
could use philosophy, you can use systematic thought, the system that is no system, right? The asystematon,
Yes.
according to Schelling or Novalis, who had this whole architectonic spiel,
Yeah.
this whole playing with thought, paradigms and such.
But then there's this skeptical mind for my whole life that would, like you said, when you said it's funny, but then you quickly went past funny because it's more than because it's easy to get caught in it's funny and then past the salt, past the and you move on into your meal or whatever you're doing and you forget about it and it's just something funny and it's this is something that's so not well Chesterton called them spiritual puns. So they are
Yeah.
funny, but when you really look into them and open your heart to them and touch it, like you said, on this frequency, they're everywhere. And it's like the proof is in the pudding. It's right. Do the math. If there's only one mind, of course, Randy and Randy are going to come together and all these things are going to come together because there's only one consciousness really just dreaming.
Right, right. I mean, that's an intense state to get to, and it's also easy, I think, once you have a taste of it, right? You've smelled it, you have some sense of what it's like, whatever choose your metaphor,
Yeah.
but going to that state, I mean, I think what for a lot of people, the direct and immediate way, of course, is the toad medicine
Yes. Can you
in
explain
particular.
that? What that is?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of psychedelic substances. You could really they're alchemical devices, right? They're alchemical substances, essentially, right? And I've experimented. I mean, that's actually my business. My as a philosopher, what I focus on, in fact, has always been my hero. You start talking about your heroes in this book. Well, my hero around those similar like ages that you were was I got really into John Lilly, John C. Lilly,
Yes.
the inventor of the flotation tank, and um, I was also into like Terence McKenna
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Like there were some head shops down in San Diego that had nice, really good libraries with magic and
Yeah.
this kind of like psychedelic philosophy from back in the day. I got into Alfred North Whitehead's Process and Reality because I was following up on the references that McKenna was laying down,
Right.
and I got really into Process and Reality, and there you go. I'm a philosopher, but I was always really into John Lilly. He was my childhood hero. So he invented the flotation tank, and he was also an early member of the what became SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, with Frank Drake and Carl
Carl
Sagan.
Sagan, yeah.
You know,
And that
and
beautiful movie Contact came out of that
oh yeah,
tells the whole truth in that movie. It's all right
right,
there.
right.
And it's
And
written
then
by
people
a
know,
skeptic.
yeah, yeah, and like people know Altered States. That's all about John
Yes.
Lilly. Um, and So anyway, he invented the float tank, and I got really into the idea of like consciousness, the mind, and I wanted to do I wanted to really explore the possibilities for science of consciousness. And what I found when I got really into that kind of literature, like what is consciousness, what is the mind, and I found that I didn't quite find in a lot of it what I was looking for. So now I'm in the business of spelling out what I was looking for. Like when you go through the video store and you see these sci-fi movies and you're like, ooh, that one looks good. That's
Yes.
the one I want to based on the cover of the movie or the cover of the book.
Right.
And then if you are disappointed, it's because you had something in mind. So you go into that. This is like a nice little thought experiment. You go into that and you follow your passion, you follow the enthusiasm, you follow, where does the enthusiasm come from? Where does the passion come
Yeah.
from? And the answer, and you know this now, once you do the toad medicine, you know it. The answer is, this ultimate state, the highest state of consciousness, however you want to frame it. I mean, we could just say it, right? Like
Yeah.
that I'm God, that all
Yeah.
there is the absolute infinite. It's overwhelming overflowingness. It's God pouring God into God,
That's it.
and that's it. That's the truth. That's all there is. One thought experiment that I've used over the years is, well, what would there be? What could there be? There could be pure and radical nothingness, right? Which is such a destructive, annihilative thought that I can't hold it on the one hand. It would suck it away like a black hole. And everything. And the fact that we're even doing this, even if this is just reduced to a minuscule little bit of something, it's still something, right? So it's not pure and radical nothingness in the most radical, absolute possible sense.
Right.
It can't be that, right? Or maybe it can in a weird way. Okay, so the other alternative is perhaps the absolute opposite of that, which is the overwhelming overflowingness, a surplus of being that is beyond being, in this positivity that is beyond anything positive, right? So, I mean, it turns out they're not different, and of course, right? So, I mean, this is like a thought experiment I present my friends growing up. I present to my students now in a more like kind of barely more formal way, in the context of like Plato and Aristotle and everything we're reading in class.
Yes.
But ultimately it's the truth. It's the absolute infinite ultimate reality. And I am that. I am this, doing this. And if I tell you the truth, you are that. Right? Everything is. That's the real truth of everything. You can take anything and everything and anything, and just explode it to its absolute infinite form. It's true. It's a formless form. And that's that it all coalesces.
And
Into this ultimate.
what would you say is the blockage to this? Is it blocked in a game of cosmic hide and seek? So you're born in this wonder and you're just eyes open. Wow, I can't believe I'm here. I'm here, and everything's magical. And then separation begins and you get a name and a social security number and a credit card and a job and the name for everything. You get all these objects and subjects and things, and we get lost. Is it that is, and then trauma and we forget, and then we have to discover our true nature?
Yeah, I mean, even all that stuff, like all of those things can be they call in the literature, they call them reactivators, right? Like or they don't call them that. They say there's reactivation, this experience you have where you had this mind-blowing 15-minute like experience that perhaps you had the like whiteout, you can't even remember. As soon as you're done, you're like, I don't know, okay, wow, I feel good. And then you have these like dreams. All of a sudden, you wake up, you're like, everything is light. I did.
Yes.
You know, or you
Yes.
wake up and you're like, I did it again. I reached,
Yes.
you know, but then I realized it's not just, and then it was like when I put on my Led Zeppelin and I would do you know, ecstatic dance in the kitchen or whatever while I was
Yes.
cooking, you know, and boom, I'm right back there, and I'm just the absolute infinite, and I know all the consequences of the absolute infinite, all the implications, you know, and it just becomes, oh yeah, you know, I am absolutely everything, and so in my philosophy, and I like to go there, you know, because in my philosophy, in my dissertation work, you know, the title is um, the universal ontology of the infinite sphere, and I'd love to share with you. I think the main
Yes.
thing I want to share with you actually is the point. What I think is the fundamental thing. You know, the way of framing it. I think this is important, but also why this thing called universal ontology is a really important addition to the way of framing it. In fact, the ancient and perennial philosophy is revealed like a sunken continent with this like this framework, you know,
Can
because
you
it's all about framing
explain
it. And so
just
the frame, you know,
some people would ontology would be a
oh
universal,
yeah, yeah,
like what that would be for.
it's right. Yeah. I mean, ontology is basically synonymous with philosophy. It means the science of being,
Yeah.
the study of being, the logos of ta onta, beings, beingness. And that's, for example, like in Aristotle, he formulates it in his Metaphysics as being synonymous with theology, because being is, you know, the highest, most perfect thing. Parmenides, who Plato really respected, really knew well, you know, Father Parmenides had this really interesting way of putting it. There were these two ways. The word is hodos, odo, and it's an odd word in Greek. It's O D O. So it's like a circle, a triangle, and a circle.
Ah,
So it's actually like a kind of magic sigil, and you could squish it together, you know, and have like a triangle inside of a circle. It's kind of cool, you know, the
yeah.
way, right? Because that's what I'm talking about, right? The Tao, the way that, you know, without moving, without looking out the window, without traveling, you know,
Right.
you go there. You know, it's a going without going, and and
Like
and
those
the
beautiful
ego,
lines from George Harrison, without leaving, I think he's copying Lao Tzu, without leaving my
yeah,
house, I know the whole universe.
right, yeah,
The journey without a step, or the inward step.
yeah, absolutely. This is Heraclitus, straight up.
Yes.
This is the Tao Te Ching, straight up. You know, and like there are two paths you can there are two paths you can go. Um, this is Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin.
Yes.
There are two paths, um, but in the long run, um, you know.
The
So anyway, I
Course
mean,
in
these things.
did you study the Course in Miracles? Because on the blackboard it looked like the symbol of the Course in Miracles. I don't know if that was an accident or when you
Well,
showed me your whiteboard and there
no
was this
accident.
beautiful circle with all the arrows coming to it.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that. I started hearing more about it when I was looking at your different videos. I saw people referring to this,
Yes.
people whose opinion I really respect. It seems you're frozen. Are you okay? You're back.
Oh no, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I freeze?
No,
Yeah.
just plow right
Yeah.
through anything like that. You're great.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm not familiar with the course. What's it called again? The course
Course
of
in
Miracles.
Miracles, and it's taught.
Yeah.
I'll just give you the whole book. It's really like 16 to 20 pages over and over again, repeating and but different ways, the same point, which is what I think we're doing. Like, I'm sure your thesis is just pounding away at this one
Yeah.
pointless point. That's right. And it
Yes.
was like the circle with all the arrows that you had on the blackboard that day, right before your birthday.
Oh, cool.
And so the course is just trying to correct correct the perception, like the medicine, the astonishment medicine does, and let you see it as one dream rather than separation. And the book just pounds that over and over. Non-dual Christ rather than a dualistic seeming biblical Christ.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, I get you. Yeah, totally.
And they say
Yeah,
a line, I think something like it's a journey without distance to a place that you've never left, something like that. And that's what you're
beautiful.
saying. You're saying the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Yeah,
Amazing.
I can bring us through a little story here.
Sure.
Um I mean, and the other thing is this is high magic. I got a few like little things to remind me of things. Like you know Aleister Crowley's book here,
Yes.
right? The way it opens up is by identifying high magic, and it's got all this stuff about like what's monism, what's dualism, and so on. And I think that what high magic and what this philosophy as high magic or the word wizard, right? It means the way, right? It's talking about this wise and that wise, right? So wisdom in this absolute infinite has infinite wisdom, and according to people like Heraclitus and stuff, this infinite wisdom controls, steers all things. And this is the ancient meaning of cybernetics. There's this cybernetic like control that perhaps is fate or whatever, but you know, um, there's a kind of like coming together, a coalescence of the Trinity into this really profound sense of duality, dualism, and then these get reconciled in like through an undualism into this monism, and finally there's a certain way of genuine of all of these things. The genuine form of it is,
Yes.
that's the path, right? This is the way through like numbers and geometry, sacred geometry, which is absolutely everywhere. Numbers and geometry, mathematics is absolutely everywhere, and these are the ways of framing through these eternal objects, that are mathematical entities, whatever they really ultimately are. Poof! It all ends in this ultimate reality, and the ultimate reality is the absolute infinite. And where is it? Who is it? What is it? All of these things coalesce. There's
Yes.
only that, and it's you. It's this experience in the here and now. It is the center, the core, the essence of the here and the now, and every like sense of these things. The presence. It's almost Christmas. We have presents.
Yes.
And it's just this infinitesimal point, but that's too abstract. That's not what it is. It's not an abstraction. It's this like infinitesimal point that looks through all eyes. It feels through all feeling things like fingers and hands and bodies, right? And is truly the self, and a fully embodied real sense. It's this. It's the computer and the world. It's all of these things that we're doing. This is what it is. The universe is so constructed as to be able to observe itself, and it's not just the universe. It's bigger than that. It's
Yes.
absolutely infinitely bigger than any possible thing that it could possibly ever come into being. So it's bigger than existence. It's bigger than
Yes.
any kind of reality because it is the ultimate reality. And it's
That's
penultimate reality. It's
yes.
anti-penultimate reality.
And that's why I think panentheism says it better than pantheism. Pantheism is all is God, but panentheism sounds like what you're saying, that it's all this God or oneness or wholeness or your true nature, but it's also bigger than it can't be put in a box. Or so now you know this and you experience this, and now you're teaching these students, maybe 18, 19, 20-year olds and up, returning students. How do you express this ineffable? You're doing a great job, but it's such a how do you express it, and how is your success rate that you watch it land in someone, you see the astonishment in their face, and maybe they don't say it out loud, but they come to your office hours and they say, I tried some medicine or I tried meditation. And how's that going?
Yeah. Well, I mean, another thing is just looking at me,
Yeah.
at 8 in the morning, I mean, that's a hard time to have a class. That's what I teach every semester. And you know, I think that they can see in me the genuine sincerity of this, and that by that they get the example of like what is truly meant by Plato's cave. You know,
Yeah.
why is Plato giving us this story of a cave? What's so significant about the Republic? You know, it turns out he was like carefully crafting the letters. There's these stories. And so that, and like where the line appears in the Republic, there's like a whole like Plato's Republic, like the Bible code, but of Plato's Republic, you know,
Great.
and so, I mean,
And then,
these are like,
the mystery schools back then, the Eleusinian mystery schools, where
mhm,
you go for a day or so, and
right.
obviously take the medicine and get the truth,
Yeah.
and then go back into the
Kaikion.
world.
Yeah. They took something called Kaikion.
Yeah,
That's something we know about, you know, and like, I'm not the expert on theurgy and everything. I have like some insights. I have friends like Gregory Shaw is the expert on theurgy. There's a number of, you know, really good people out there who work on these things, specialists, and that's what philosophy is. That in its best sense, it's a resource that you can activate by talking to these people, you know. But of course, the shape of things, you know, what philosophy is in the academy. I'm talking about academic philosophy. I mean, I go to the conferences, I go to the big ones, I go to little special ones, and you know, there is this sense of what truly philosophy is out there, but it gets lost. It
yeah,
gets dominated by these other forces. You know, like we philosophers, we should be getting what we need to do our work, because this is the great work. I mean, every individual has the great work. They have access to this when they do the toad medicine, and they become prepared for this breakthrough experience, and they have it, or they return to it, and they know, you know, what you're engaging in is it's the great work in the alchemical sense, the magnum opus, right?
yeah,
But what it comes down to in philosophy is it's really well integrated already, and there's but also philosophy has the potential to arise again in a form that it doesn't yet have in known historical humanity. You know, maybe on other planets or something. Like I could say the same thing about mathematics, right? Maybe
right,
mathematics, you know, is something that is the way for all of the possible aliens, you know,
right.
as well. But the point is to like to find this way of integration. So there's the experience, the immersion, but then you integrate it, right? And everyone has
Yeah,
whatever they do. Maybe they're a chef. Maybe they have kids, and this is something that they focus on in life. You know, but everything, your life, it becomes the vehicle for integration. And if you happen to focus on magic for yourself, or philosophy for myself, or both, since we both dabble in all of these things, you know, it has the potential to become the integral philosophy, and the coalescence of magic and philosophy and everything. And for an individual experience, it can all come together in this really powerful way, and just boom, you know, make the ultimate like diving board platform framework situation. And from there, boom, is this experience that you can have as an individual. But the
right.
point then becomes, how can I share this? How can we change humanity? How can we change the
Yes.
structure of society? Look to the right and the left, and you have, you know, Kardashians and Trump and all the crazy people who support all of this world, you know, and perhaps it's the dominant forces of materialism, as all of these traditions tell us, right? Mechanism.
Right.
But you know, whatever it is, there's a conspiracy. It's even deeper than that, because it's deeper than culture and everything, right? Because you could do this alone in the desert, and then come back to it and be like, oh man, it's hot, you know, and you're suffering. And
Yeah,
there's a conspiracy of consciousness that keeps you immersed. And yeah, it comes
I
down to,
like that.
you know, you realize for yourself individually, it comes down to like the body and the mind, you know, the whole body mind universe system is like, you know, this is like, I came down to this planet to have this experience, to be Randy, to be a human being in this world with this family and this society and everything, you know, and damn it, I'm doing it. But
Yeah,
I get immersed in it.
yeah,
It's a lot, you know, and I've had, so when I did this toad medicine, at the end of the summer, I remembered, oh my God, it started hitting me a little later. Like, I've been here before.
yeah,
Of course, I've been here before, not through the toad medicine, but through just like my wild teenage years in San Diego, on stuff, you know,
yeah.
on a bunch of acid. I realized suddenly clarity, and I was like, And it was regal. You know, it was like,
Yeah.
pure consciousness, but I'm embodied, and I am it. I am God. And I'm enjoying just being here in this dirty garage. Like, I don't care. Like, this is the heavenly throne room. And
Yeah.
I am on the throne and everything. And I remembered that. And I remember that that's something that I have always been in touch with. I've always tried to remain in touch with, even when I was smaller than that. Down in Mexico, I might have accidentally done some shrooms and stuff and had some experiences here and there, but, or smelled some weed smoke or whatever, and that got me into a non-dual state,
Right.
with weird patterns on furniture and stuff. But in any case, you don't need any of that,
It's always
right?
there.
Yeah, because it's the truth. That's just the substance that reveals, like the water of Lethe keeps us in amnesia, in this state of amnesia.
Yes.
But the opposite of that is anamnesis, not just
Yeah.
normal memory recollection, but anamnesis, which people define that as like the memory of past lives or whatever. But really, it's the memory of, oh, boom, here it comes. Yes.
Yes.
Absolute omniscience, absolute omnipotence and everything. And remembering this is powerful stuff. This is far beyond, theories of explanation for reincarnation. How do we deal with the fact that we're immortal and there are lives and there are different creatures and a hierarchy, a chain of being? This is even deeper than all of that, right? So, I mean, there's infinite potential here, right? And science has always been deep down. Well, that's exactly where they try to bury it, right? But truly, this scientia, this knowing, is the scientia universalis, the mathesis universalis. And this mathesis universalis et scientia naturalis perennis is this ancient and perennial tradition of framing it and staging it, like in magic, staging it right, And every time I turn my head, I know that there's like a dismantling. You can see, because I can turn my head and you can see the back of my head and stuff. But I know that really the front, which never leaves right here, is where the finished creation appears to me as an appearance. But really, there's this dismantling, at every, like the Langoliers and Stephen King, there's like this dismantling.
One of my favorites.
Yeah.
Chomping.
The nothing. And in the Never-Ending Story, the nothing that he's got a name too. They name him.
I can't remember. It's beautiful.
But
it's woven into everything. It's in all the fairy tales. Even the kissing the toad, I think, is based on that, right? It's everywhere. Breadcrumbs everywhere.
Yeah,
so when you wrote me and you showed me your post right before your birthday this year, it was like the birth of the Bodhisattva, which I wrote a chapter of in that book. Like you were giving gifts to the students. This is a gift, but you were giving and how, yeah, which is amazing. And how did they take it?
They love it. I mean, it's theatric, right?
And it speaks to something, whether they get it or not, that is always there. So, but your work, are you honing your language to you want to see that recognition, or at least get them to try the medicine or meditation or something?
Well, look, I mean, there's this is the hard path, right, of like sharing in this way. But I feel like what I'm really here for, right, like what I've studied, everything, every little hint and clue in the books and everything, is the revelation of the system that works.
Yes.
Okay, it is the great work, but only the great work that truly works is the great work.
When you wrote me and you said this, that's what got that stood out. All the words were there, but you wrote, I have something that actually works. And I said, all right, let's go. Because there's so many people, we've been talking about it for thousands of years, and yet look at the world, and the world is wonderful. I mean,
we've never seen a revolution.
No.
Yeah. There's a revolution coming, and it's simply the revolution of the sphere, of the infinite sphere. And it'll be revealed that all of this stuff about spirit, all this spirituality is spirituality. It has everything to do with this. It sounds like a quirky, kooky, dorky little thing to say spirituality at this point, but it's also, here's an equally dorky thing, right? Is alignment.
Yes,
Because
I
the
love that.
absolute ultimate final complete enlightenment that we're talking about,
Yeah,
right? Enlightenment, which you can have individually, but it's 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 about in alignment with
yeah,
all of these systems. It's this symmetry of geometry and arithmetic and whatever you ate for breakfast, that or what, everything is just all about this, and it's deeper than any kind of like line I can make with my body, or like that I can draw really hard, or
right.
use physics to find the perfect line, metrics. And no, this is already here. It's the line that goes all the way back and goes
Yeah,
all the way forward. It goes through all things and constitutes all things, right? The one particle, kind of like Feynman and Wheeler had this discussion. They figured out, oh, what about like one particle universe, one photon or one electron moving
yes.
backwards and forwards in time. It's
Well,
kind
but
of like that.
once. Yep,
And in
I
that
agree.
milieu, you talked about Feynman, right? Like, who was it James Randi was close with all this
Yes,
this
they were.
litany of such figures, Asimov and so on, right? So was John Lilly, right? He's like that's
Yeah.
kind of like they shared that world, of that intellectual world of that vintage, of that particular time, and Lilly was using this mathematical text in the float tank. It's
Wow.
obviously it's a book, you don't bring it in the water, right? But Lilly was using these alchemical devices of LSD and ketamine. He was also using like Claudio Naranjo and all of these systems he would go into. But eventually, in the early '70s, he found this book that was published in 1969, Laws
Wow.
of Form, by George Spencer Brown, and and he was using that in the tank, and I knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
This whole thing, this mathematics, is all about this one thing called the first distinction, and it occurs, it's drawn, it's made it's what's called the unmarked state. So there's this unmarked state, and he uses a blank piece of paper, right? The page is blank there. So
Right.
that's the unmarked state. And there's this entity called the first distinction. And then from this, he builds a primary arithmetic and a primary algebra based on that arithmetic, where the constants are just the first distinction, and there's no number. But then it can be interpreted for number. The primary arithmetic then can be interpreted for number. So he does his mathematics thing, and as a mathematician, he presents this incredible system that people are working on now. I'm at the center of like the activity of this
Right.
organization that, you know, but it's about the unity of mathematics. But I knew what Lilly was talking about. He's talking about, and I knew what Spencer Brown did. I called up Spencer Brown. I saw also in here that you were not shy to like write your heroes. You
Yes,
know,
we both did the same thing. And you
yeah,
said your cat, just our
yeah,
cats.
and
My
yeah,
cat was
Shakespeare,
Shakespeare, and
and
your
mine
cat,
are Yorick and Hero
Hero.
from Shakespeare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so the story, at the beginning of the pandemic, we watched The Last Man, a really cool little series, and one of the characters was named Yorick. So we were, all the kids, all the family watched this series. So
Yeah.
together we decided to name Yorick and Hero, these two kitties.
That's Schopenhauer right there. Um,
Yeah.
Randy, if I was watching this, I would say like that great line in Harry Met Sally, I want what he's having, which I think is an important thing in this. Like, they might not believe you, they might not, but they see this joy. And I think the joy is part of this. Once you uncover this diamond inside your chest, it's like right inside, and you uncover it, you want to share it, and even if you're not sharing it, you're happy for no reason at all. It's like an uncaused joy. And so I'm loving that. I think that's a great thing. That's a hook to grab somebody who might be covered up. As a skeptic, when I was a skeptic, and that's what happened when I met Paul. It he just dismantled Randy, everything.
Yeah.
And he loved Randy still, but he said he's wrong. Everything's wrong. Not it's not lights out when you die. It's everything Randy's saying is wrong, and just go turn within. So what was your, um, was it Lily? Did you try a flotation tank? What were your practices I mean, obviously medicine is giant, and I'm sure you meditated in a tank or on a mountaintop somewhere or in silence. What would you share with people?
Yeah, I had sand dunes available to me, so I wasn't in the Himalayas, but
Yeah.
and I floated in the float tank in San Diego. I got really into this stuff, In fact, I completely devoted myself to not just Lilly and his way of framing it, but what he was looking at, which was Spencer Brown's laws of form.
Right. And would you
And it
say
was
that
through.
that single pointed devotion that you've had throughout your life, just like me with magic or music or whatever it is that you were focused on awe and wonder, and you wanted to keep that wonder as a child that you found in Mexico and wherever, so that people need that single pointed, and not everyone has that because maybe they have to work and they have to, like you said, raise
Mhm.
children. Somehow we have to find that practice, right?
Yeah,
To
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, so here's the thing. There's kind of like in magic, in high magic, there are these like two pillars, these two columns or whatever, whatever you want to call them. So there's pure imagination and
Yeah.
pure intelligence. Let's
Yes.
suppose we could separate those things. I mean, they can't be
Yes.
separated, but suppose we can imagine here imagination, right? And so we're imagining imagination on this hand, and we're thinking about thinking on this hand. So we're imagining pure intelligence over here thinking, or whatever these are exactly, right? And yeah, once you have the revelation, then there is only absolute infinite imagination and there is only
Yes.
absolute infinite intelligence, and these two are exactly what you are, and somehow you've decided to frame it in such a way, such a wise, that here's what you got, and I knew early on that I needed both the spirit, this point that I'm talking about, the spirit, and I need the ground. It's the groundless ground, sure, in the end, but I also need the deep integument, right? Of like a healthy body. I decided I was going to have kids early on. I have
Yeah.
six perfect kids.
Six.
3 boys, 3 girls. Yeah, it's actually the smallest perfect number. In fact. And that's why, in fact, Iamblichus identifies it as the even times the even times, or 666, six times six times
Ah,
six, to give the dimensions of the soul, the number of the soul, it's called. Uh, anyway, we can get into that. It's absolutely related to the cross and the crucifixion, and the nature of the space-time continuum is what that's about. Okay, and this is the great work. This is all part of the great work, the deep framing hidden in all these philosophy books from way back, from East and West, and spontaneously discovered by the self, by yourself. You
right.
just spontaneously come to this stuff anyway, and then like a dream, you're like, oh man, you start keeping a dream journal, you start having more dreams, and then
Yes.
you have the practice of it, and you find a way of expressing it. You start writing a dream, and boom, it just goes. You can go pages with a dream. Whereas most of the time, you wake up, you're like, wow, you're like flipping immersed in nice dreams, and then
It's
I don't
gone.
know,
Yeah. And then
alarm clock.
Like Feynman, we start to practice lucid dreaming. Remember when he would practice switching his light? He would go to sleep in the day at college, pull the shades down, run home from class, shut the shades because it was like 2 in the afternoon, and then try to go to sleep in order to. He'd say, "I'm going to flick the light switch in my dream," and practice that lucid dreaming where you're
Oh
awake
wow,
in the dream.
ooh,
Yeah, he
cool,
wrote about that
yeah.
in one of his books. I think,
Oh,
um, what was it?
the
That
one with the
funny title. The
yeah.
funny, you know,
Yeah, and in that one, he also talks about his time in the flotation tanks.
yes, with Lily. Yeah, he talks about Lily.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think it was the
yeah.
cargo cult science chapter, right? Was it that one?
I
I'm
can't
not
remember.
sure.
I have it
Yeah.
like down here. But
He would call Randy, just a little story. He would call Randy. Randy would fool him. So one time, like you were in Mexico, Randy shows up. He calls Caltech and says, I'm in town. I just landed in the airport. So So Feynman cancels classes and goes to pick him up. And he gets in the car and they're driving and he says, what do you want to eat? I'm famished. And he's just manipulating Feynman totally. And Feynman says, how about this Mexican restaurant? Randy says, great. They walk in, they sit at the table. The waiter brings the plates and the spoons. And Randy says, do you mind if I borrow your spoon? And just gives it a little, and it was just brought to the table, gives it a little rub, very light, and the spoon melts and breaks into two. And Feynman's like, I'll figure it out. And they would have a deal where he can call once a day, or else he'll call all day. He can call once a day, and it took him longer than normal on that one. Took many days. Once a day, he can call and ask a question, and Randy has to be honest about it. And it took weeks. And then he said, you didn't come the day you said you did. You came the night before. And Randy said, you got me. He flew in the day before, went to the Mexican restaurant, pre-bent the spoon, paid the waiter, and set up the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, these people like Richard Feynman, who was talking about grand unified theory, and it's like an onion, and nature will come out the way she is, and John Lilly and all these beautiful people trying to give a little piece to us. And I remember my friend RJ, the philosopher that I mentioned, he said he hadn't had the experience yet. I had it in 2009, and I couldn't shut up about it. So we talked about it constantly. Life is a dream. Life is a dream. We have to wake up. And he had an epiphany instead of the experience. First an epiphany, and then it hit him. He was reading Schopenhauer, and it hit him. He saw the arc, and I think you hinted at this earlier, philosophy, and I couldn't see it before, but philosophy is pointing at this all the way. Like you kind of said it earlier, science is pointing at it. Everything's pointing at it. It's us that are looking the wrong way, or we're looking down, or we're thinking about dinner, or we're thinking about money or success, and we're missing. Philosophy is always saying it's trying to wake up.
Yeah, and everything we do,
absolutely
everything. When you're cooking, like everything. So I have 6 small kids. It's the Nutcracker every year. I'm in it. I wear a top hat,
That's great.
And dress rehearsal starts tonight. We have deep immersion and deep integration with all this stuff. So I mean, it could absolutely be done, the great work or whatever, but in particular when it's done with philosophy, I mean, you could stick to alchemy or theology. I mean, there's some powerful stuff in there, but in the mode of philosophy in particular, we're going to find this thing that's what we're looking for when we look for, on the one hand, stuff like a grand united theory, right? A theory of everything, or a fundamental theory. And on the other hand, something like what Heidegger was pointing at, when he indicated that being, is Dasein, and that time is absolutely fundamentally related to this. And then he spells it all out with that whole book, Being in Time, but according to one of the people I focus on, a Christian mystic named Hedvig Conrad Martius, who was a student of Husserl, a brilliant woman, a really young woman who was doing philosophy like we are, like from a really young age, and went and studied with Husserl. She's a Christian mystic, and she has this critique of Being in Time when it first came out, and she indicates that something like Heidegger happened, and it was like this event. All the philosophers and all the intellectual world was looking at Heidegger. They were like, oh wow, look, he's at the door that's been closed for centuries. He's going to open the door on the question of being. He did it. And what has it accomplished? What has it done? The world isn't transformed in everything in this deep sense that it could be, right? So what has he done? And so this is like her critique of him, and my way of pointing to her work, which is about this universal ontology, not just fundamental ontology like what Heidegger was doing, but her work that spells out this universal ontology where all the sciences and mathematics and everything comes into this deep integration. So it's this one thought, it's this one
Love
meaning,
that.
it's
One
this
thought.
one science,
Yep.
one philosophy, the immanent science, the formless form, and it applies in all the different fields of
Yeah.
everything. And so
Schopenhauer would say the same, right? He had one idea.
Mhm.
I say all the time to people here, I'm I'm a one-trick pony. This is it.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
pointing to this one way, this one exit, this one
right,
entrance,
right.
this one. Yeah,
And I think it's important to show this the way it's framed, which is the mind, the world, the life, experience or whatever, everything. The way it's framed is really important, and this is the nature of dimensionality, the nature of space time. The way it works, is it all comes down to the point. Like the
yeah,
idea of Euclid, everything in the definitions of a line, a plane, a solid, volumetric, stereometric entity, and then possibly the fourth dimension, the fourth spatial temporal dimension, right? And so on with anthroposophy and etc. We have like all these different dimensions, and as well like today's quantum theory, and we have like string theory and all these different proposals that involve these hyperspace theories, right? Conrad Martius as well had her hyperspace theory about the fourth dimension is eternity, is the aeon, that she calls it Aeonisha realm site, and at the bottom, at the fundamental core of it all is this, and at the farthermost periphery of this system of dimensions is the Apeirisha realm site, the absolute infinite as a space-time continuum, the space-time of absolutely infinitely many dimensions. Absolutely. Okay, so it's the absolute infinite, not infinitum secundum quid, or all of these different ways of talking about infinite this and that, those things lead there,
yeah,
but it's infinitely
yeah,
beyond. It's infinitely different. The absolute infinite is ultimate reality.
yeah,
Okay, and it appears as an infinite sphere in relation to the infinitesimal, the center, which is everywhere of the infinite sphere, the infinite unity, the infinite one, the one that oneself is, the pure subjectivity of pure self-reference, pure self-referentiality is being in and
yeah.
of itself. And this is what I knew, early on, and I called up all the cyberneticians to talk to them about it, because this is Spencer Brown's laws of form, and people can only get it going here and there a little bit, but with the toad, since
Right.
then, now I know that this is the way to go. So it's the dissertation, for instance, is the integration of the formal ontological paradigm of Spencer Brown on the one hand, and its analog, because it's the same stuff as Hedvig Conrad Martius's material ontology, the ontology of reality that becomes universal ontology. And this is her ultimate project and spans her career. She's like a rising star in philosophy. One can like ride the rise of Conrad Martius right now, today. This is like, I think, really important for philosophers of today. But I hope to see in my lifetime, I hope to see it through an absolutely completely transcendental transformation of absolutely everything. The revolution of the infinite sphere is a revolution that we've never even imagined.
Yes, yeah.
There's Marxism, vegetarian. I'm vegetarian, and I'm I recycle and all that stuff. I believe in all that. I'm married to one of the top feminists in the world. Actually, my wife, she's also a philosophy professor, and she's really close with Lusa Rigoraj, Jennifer Carter. She has this amazing philosophy of her own. All these things are really important, but there's this like breakthrough to the ultimate paradigmatic revolution. I mean, this is beyond Kuhn and Jaspers and all this
Yeah.
stuff. It's straight up given to us, like in Timaeus, in Parmenides, in different cultures. The light of the Dharmakaya. There's all these ways of talking about this ultimate thing, but bringing it all together as philosophy, as the new integral philosophy of the whole, ta panta, and the holon, the holos, and making these distinctions between absolutely everything versus the absolute infinite, which is absolutely everything, but absolutely everything then becomes all things, and then all things become each and everything. I mean, this is like one way of framing it that I think is useful, but it's
Yeah,
all about the framing. It's all about like Randy came the day before and went to that Mexican restaurant and
yeah,
did some magic, did some magic staging. And that's what led to this happening, this life that we're having here on Earth, this happening, you know, this occurrence is why is there something rather than nothing? The famous line that Leibniz came
yes,
up with, is a sentiment that before Leibniz was certainly articulated in different wise, and since then Heidegger and Kant and everyone reinvokes this phrase.
yes,
And so I mean, these things are charged with tradition, with sediment of meaning, but ultimately what it is just the yes,
yeah,
absolute affirmation of pure, the coalescence of all meaning into the absolute, like it all coalesces into a point in a certain respect. Okay. But then that's the absolute infinite one. That's the absolute infinitesimal, or the unity of the absolute infinite. But that's absolutely different than the absolute infinite. So what you have here is a system of, or a systematon system or whatever, of the absolute infinite is ultimate reality. Penultimate reality is the one, the absolute one. And you could think of it like an abstraction. That's fine. As a hypothesis, I tell my students, all these are heuristic devices. We're going to put on our thinking cap in this class. We're going to do this. You're going to get graded on, trying on these heuristic devices. But all along they know, like, okay, they might be skeptical, like, but
right.
they're also like, oh, yeah, you're right. Of
Have you
course.
had a student come to you and just by you lighting them up the way you just did there, maybe they quietly took, they whispered, I took the medicine, and because it's so different to get beyond the words, and even though you just lit it up beautifully,
Yeah,
to know what that
I have.
means. Like I tried to read the Course in
Yeah.
Miracles in 2009 before the experience, and I gave it to my mother. I couldn't do it, and I just signed it to her and gave it to her, and then I had the experience, and then it took many years, and then it was like I wrote the Course in Miracles. It becomes something within you. So
Beautiful. Yeah.
do you see the students? Maybe you're lighting them up, because if you talked all these words boringly, like it would be bad.
Right.
It
It'd
would
be
be
really
tough.
bad.
When I first
Right.
had Michael Simon at Stony Brook teach Heidegger in metaphysics, I took the Woody Allen route and I just made fun of it in a funny, good way,
Yeah.
and really clever. And he gave me an A, but I had no clue what
Right.
was going on. No clue.
Yeah.
Heidegger's hard. 1 in 10,000 maybe understand Heidegger. So how do we
Yeah.
get to the the lady at the checkout counter, or the man sweeping the
Right.
room?
Okay. Yeah. So I think this is the important thing. Yeah, we should recycle and everything, and all of these things coalesce, all these purposes. We should realize that climate change is real, and start changing our national plans and everything. But what we really need is a revolution that takes up as a constitution the self-constitution of things, of nature, of the universe.
Yeah.
You could go to physics and talk about the physical, or you could talk about it in like this broader sense and include like psychology and a really deep speculative psychology, but whatever, there's a self-constitution of nature or of things. The universe is so constructed as to observe itself, because look, it's me. I exist, and the theory of life, be it like an autopoiesis or any kind of self-construction, or an ontopoiesis. These are whole areas of philosophy, autopoietic theory and ontopoietic theory, whatever you want to call it. It involves more than this. We are not this body, right? We are not as we appear to ourselves in the mirror, right? We seem to be able to jump rope, and we think, aha, I am independent. This is my body.
Right.
I can do this. I'm not connected to my mama. The umbilical cord, bye placenta. There's no umbilical relation to everything, right? That's fine.
Yeah.
But the truth is, you're absolutely beyond all of this. You're beyond the body, you're beyond the mind, beyond the presentation, beyond the phenomena, beyond any possible appearance, because you're absolutely infinite. It's infinitely, infinitely infinite, and so on.
Well, what do you say to like Uncle Bill
Right,
at the Uncle
right.
Jack at the
So
Thanksgiving table who doesn't
yeah,
care
or
about
the woman at the
philosophy?
checkout.
Yeah,
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 all these things, these questions like how do you present to your students? All of these things are like how do you continue on the surface of the earth, communicating in this like, I can communicate to the next cell and then they can communicate to the next cell, right? And
right.
it's through contagion. No, we need like boom contagion, right? Like so
Like you said,
so
revolution.
right.
Yeah,
So it's through the vehicle of the idea, the simple, intuitive idea of the infinite sphere, which is paradoxical, and people have trouble with it. It slips out of their hands. They can't. It's not a basketball, but it's like a basketball. It's like the Earth. It's like the armillary sphere of
yeah.
the cosmos. It's the eighth sphere, or it's beyond the infinite sphere. So the Stoics, Plotinus calls it the sphere of the all one, etc. This thing has a ubiquitous presence, and what it is it's a special relation. It introduces an absolute relativity. And this absolute relativity is the most proemial relation, that between the center and the periphery. The center is everywhere. There's like this old formula. God is an infinite sphere, the center of which is everywhere, and the circumference nowhere. It's prop 2 of an opus philosophorum, an opus propositionum, like Wittgenstein's Tractatus. It's all these little lines, or how Nietzsche writes. It's these 24 propositions, these statements of what God is, and each of them are super deep, super beautiful, super wonderful. I am going into them in my dissertation, but number 2 is really important to everyone because it's been repeated by like Pascal and
Love
all
him.
of these philosophers, right? That there's this infinite sphere.
You know what
And
Hofstadter said when I said Pascal, and because he called, and you'll see in that book, Skeptic's Apprentice, he said it sounds like Plath's wager instead of Pascal's wager, and I said
yeah.
Pascal found it, Doug, and you're next, and he said, yeah, we lost a good one when Pascal found God. We lost a good mind, and I said no, we didn't. I think he didn't he write. You might know more. Pascal was so excited, as you are, as I am, that he wrote something in his lining of his jacket. Do you remember this?
Oh no, I don't know that.
He put some big line in there, like to remind in the lining that he always had it with him, you know. And to Doug Hofstadter, it was a loss to science, to philosophy that
Oh wow, that's
Pascal woke
interesting.
up.
Yeah.
So it's funny
Yeah.
how people see it, Doug sees it as we lost such a great mind. Could have had so many more insights, and
Right. But see, here's I think kind of what he's getting at is like with Leibniz. With Leibniz we have the calculus. And that's
yes,
what led to all of this, right? All of our like drones and just everything,
yes,
globalization, is thanks to this kind of mathematics. But guess what that is? That calculus is about infinitely many infinitesimals, and that's different from there can be only one true, the infinitesimal, which is absolutely everywhere. Okay,
right,
once then from that is derived from this relation of what is self-constitutive of each, the infinitesimal center and the infinite as an infinite sphere. These only become meaningful through this relation that they have to each other, the periphery and the center. And this is what everything is based on, is the point, this like Euclidean or like esoteric Euclidean point that is
I love the
never
way
gone.
because I think the pop idea, like a popular idea, or when I was younger, infinite would mean like far out, like way, but I like the way you're defining it more as the center is everywhere. So it's like the water in an ocean, it's everywhere. There's no, like when you step here or way out there, that's infinite because it's everywhere. So it's sort of like Merton saying the gateway to heaven is everywhere. It's your next breath. It's right here. It's not far out.
Yeah.
It's everywhere, every step.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually what Hedwig Conrad Martius is about as well. This gate, the gate of reality is her term, Tor, and she uses Tur or door, and other metaphors as well. But often she'll say, these are not metaphors. This is more than metaphor. I don't mean
Love
just
that.
an analogy,
Yes.
constantly, and in an interview, she explained, like, I don't remember any of these things. This is kind of the gist of what I got from it, because it's all the same. It's one thing she's articulating from early on and throughout all these decades, from the 1910s to the 1960s, her whole life. It's this realization, this insight, and it's all applicable because it's about the all encompassing, and that's the truth. That's it.
Yeah.
And for like Merton as well as Conrad Martius, it's God, right? And so whatever you want to call that, complete and total, utter, complete enlightenment,
Yeah.
absolute, ultimate reality. The point is that there's a system that is stored in the alignment. And that system is what we need to look at as scientists, as thinkers, as philosophers, as artists,
Yeah.
as just livers of life. Everything participates in this relation of the infinitesimal point to the absolute infinite. And so this is the most simple intuition. And all we have to do is kind of put it on like an armillary helmet, like a
Yeah.
helmet, or like, as you described, a virtual reality goggles.
Right.
This is exactly, in fact, what James Guy, I have this book series with the Laws of Form Society. So James Guy wrote this book. He hung out with like Ram Dass and Leary, and
Ah.
he ended up doing acid this one time, and he realized everything, from it, and developed this whole metaspheric perspective. I found this and I was like, oh my God, dude, that's what I'm all about. We
Yeah.
became friends years ago, and just recently I had him come out with this year, in fact, towards repurposing mind. So
Beautiful.
it's you see, marked states number 1 and marked states number 2 is this guy's gone.
Feeling good.
Here, yeah, on feeling good. There it is, marked states number
I
2.
love the subtitle.
Yeah, and that's actually how I there's a third title to it. It's really long, but it's what inspired me to write this, like, this editor's introduction about the title, simply on feeling good, like
Yeah.
Plato's enigmatic lecture on the good. I wrote about that, and so anyway, these things, they're all this beautiful immanent science that is so contagious, as speculation, as a fundamental thought for all, fundamental thinking in, like, theories of everything, and however everyone wants to approach this stuff, so I feel like this.
Why don't we teach this immediately? Like, why don't we? Why?
Well, because,
It's coming. It's coming.
yeah,
Do we have to?
well,
Do we have to
the
suffer
reason.
forever? And like,
Yeah,
can't we get it to them early so
I
that
know,
they don't have
God
to
damn it,
suffer?
like, yeah, don't hasten the eschaton, right? No, but the thing is that, yeah, these things, see, here's the thing. I've been starting to have these, like, imaginations, visualizations or whatever, or like they're deeper than that. They're perceptions of a deeper reality. Okay, they're the divine, right?
Yes.
I'm peering into the divine through my imagination. I'm just having these imaginations, right? As we always do. We have these we're accompanied by our imagination, right? But there's this, like, divine layer, and in it, what I realize is that this thing, it's not a matter of, like, it catching on. Like, yeah, you can call it that. You can call it putting it on, right? Like, or there's this myth of the spirocon logon, which is the sphere, and that's what Atlas has on his shoulders.
Ah.
Josephus talks about this, and the word is the spirocon logon in Josephus. Diodorus and Pliny and these other guys, they also talk about this thing. They seem to present it as, like, well, it's knowledge of math and astronomy. That's the most fundamental, first of the sciences that's given by the gods to man, like fire, right?
Right.
But fundamentally, it's the sphere itself. It's
Yeah.
the ancient infinite sphere. And putting this on as a perspective, as paradigm, and Plato says it straight up, he says the sphere of the paradigm, or the paradigm of the sphere is the sphere of the paradigm, is sort of like what I got out of that in the Timaeus. the demiurge is looking at this perfect sphere, and he's trying to make reality. Is the act of creation, in the artistry of it. And the biblical creative God is based on this as well, very much influenced by Platonism, right? And theurgy, magic, right? So it's the infinite sphere, the perfect sphere. There's all these words they have for it in all of these different texts that indicate aspects of the God, right? And they're all the highest stuff, the great, the good, the awesome, right? Awesome prajnata samadhi. That's the real samadhi,
Yeah. My teacher, Paul, said his sister, I think, gave him when he was a little child a beautiful marble that was so beautiful, this beautiful, and he had never experienced an object so it just did beyond words for him. And I think it's just sounds like that, and that's the pure imagination beyond. Is that the same as Brahman?
Oh, absolutely.
Brahman, pure imagination.
Yeah. I mean, you find this, sewn into the coat, the magic coat with the golden thread or the pearl, the one bright pearl, right? With the Japanese, right? For Dogen's, the one bright pearl. And, so anyway, okay. So anyway, to another aspect of what I do, right, is I focus on John Lilly. And, in last year we had this conference, Thinking the Float Tank, in The Hague, in the Netherlands. They built this float tank at the bottom of the basement of the former U.S. Embassy, right next to the palace in The Hague. Right next to the International Court of Justice and everything. In this what's now a museum called West Den Hague. And so they made this. They focus on graphic design. They're really into laws of form, which is about the marked state and the graphical nature of this iconic logic. So they actually go to every laws of form conference, send a team of people and tripods and gear, and they tape everything. So all of our laws of form conferences are up on YouTube and everything because of that. So last year I was like, maybe we could do this, and Akeem called me up from West End Hague. He's like, this works because we want to do something about Escher. The Escher Museum is right next door, and so they named this overall big group project of art that ran from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, Gödel, Escher, Bach, after the Hofstadter title. Yeah. They even reached out to Hofstadter, and he wrote back. He was like, well, it's in the video that Akeem made. It's like, that's great. I can't do it. I can't go out right now, but this is great. I'm glad you guys are doing this. So it was about self-reference, self-referentiality. Yes. And we focused on the float tank. And I got to experiment in here. I did some stuff, but that was before the Toad, which was this year. Right.
So would your recommendation would be if someone's listening to you right now and they're getting a little excited, but they're not buying it, they're not sure, to maybe go to a float tank, maybe take a little puff of something, it doesn't have to be the Toad right away. That's down the road, the 5-MeO DMT, and to look into Martin Ball and your work and actually experience it just once, and then they'll know you're not bullshitting.
Yeah, that's a way. Yeah, that's an effective way that works. That's the work that works too. I mean something different with the work that works, the great work. So there's that, but yeah, I mean, I did the Toad, and I was like,
you tried to describe it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
where were you? Were you home? Were you quiet in darkness? What was?
Well, I'll put it this way. It happened, in a legal place, right, where where it's legal or whatever. So that's the number one thing, right? But it's something my mom did. Her psychologist suggested she maybe give it a shot. Amazing. Like 4 years ago, and she's done it, and we've heard her accounts, and we're like, I don't know. And then this summer, she came and visited, and she's like, come join me, and before that, my father as well, they're not together. He lives in San Diego, but and he was selling Benny's Reds rainbows, over by the roller coaster in the 70s. He's been around the block, and but then he did the Toad, and he was like, whoa, we saw what happened to Grandpa. It's
Yes.
like full of light and love and empathy, and
Beautiful.
it's enthusiasm, and my wife's like, oh, here we go, another
Ah,
one.
and
Sure enough.
where is your wife, Jennifer? You said Jennifer
Yeah,
Carter.
yeah, she teaches at
Where
Stony Brook, actually.
where is she on this? If you and I and her were at dinner, what would she? Where is she? Is
Yeah,
she?
well, part of
Is it?
yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
so part of the great work, comes down to this question of solipsism, like in a really deep new
Yes.
level, a new way. Like, if all there is one, and I'm God, and I'm literally God, I'm absolutely infinite, absolute everything, infinite sphere, including all things, and I'm Randy, if
And
that's the case, and
everyone,
everyone,
everyone.
right? And everyone. See that, and this
Yes,
is the thing.
that's
Like
important.
like there's two people I found after my like ultimate awakening
Yes,
that I really liked. Martin Ball. I was
yeah.
like, oh my God, he fucking gets it. Martin Ball understands everything
And
about this.
Martin would agree with everything you're saying, and he brings it right
Yeah,
and very simple. And we
right,
are God in disguise.
right.
That's it. We're
Yeah.
God.
So he did this with me like a couple weeks ago as well. We
Beautiful.
did a podcast. I was on his entheogenic
Ah,
evolution. Yeah. And so I found Martin Ball. I bought all his books. I watched every single video. I mean, I'm just constantly driving kids to ballet and picking them up from school and everything. So I've gotten into like podcasts over the years. Really good ones.
so that's
I've
a
really
good tool
refined.
to recommend to people.
Oh
The
yeah.
right podcasts could really
Yeah.
help,
Yeah. Oh,
especially
I
Martin
could
Ball.
recommend, like, there's the Rudolf Steiner audio. Dale Brunsfeld just reads Steiner straight up, which is amazing. That's some
It's
wild,
amazing.
wacky stuff. It's amazing. It's all true.
Yeah.
and and then there's the Secret History of Western Esotericism podcast, the Schwepp.
Oh,
I've
that
been
sounds
listening to
great.
this. Yeah, I've been giving this to my students to accompany their Parmenides and Heraclitus and Plato. And then one day at a International Society of Neoplatonism conference, I was getting my coffee. We woke up in the monastery, I was getting my coffee. I heard the voice. I was like, oh my God, that's him, And so he went up and he was the introducer, and the moderator of this panel on philosophical cosmology, and he gave his talk. And I'm sitting there texting my wife, like recording, moments. I'm like, look, it's him, it's totally him, and then I Google it and I'm like, no, this is a different name. This is not on the program. This is not him. It can't be, but it is. I know his name better than I know his voice better than his mama knows his voice, and so, and during the Q&A, I was like, or afterwards, I was like, so I work on phenomenological cosmology as well, which includes these, philosophical cosmology, but it's this new weird thing. It's a bit more esoteric. And I did his tagline, where he ends every episode, "Stay esoteric." I was like, it's a bit more esoteric, And he looks at me and he like steps back. He's like, "You're the first person who found me, in
Ah,
the world." So,
beautiful.
so that was cool. But anyway, that's a good podcast. So then, the Toad, right? Ever since then, now all the kids and my wife, everyone has to hear me listening to Martin Ball and Leo Gura. I found Leo Gura.
Leo, yes. And he
Yeah,
made that big, I don't know if you listened, he made a big podcast on solipsism and really spilled the
right,
beans. Then they
right.
took it down because he
Yeah,
thought, and that's
exactly.
how I felt about Gospel
Mhm.
of Astonishment book. I thought I said too much. You
Right.
give
Yeah,
away
yeah,
the game too much
yeah,
sometimes. Yes, right.
right. Yeah,
Leo is great. Yeah. So you found
yeah.
those two, Martin Ball, Leo Gura.
Yeah. And then when I combine that with my like integration or whatever, like go to some yoga meditation or whatever.
Yes.
At first it was just hanging up the laundry, taking a
It's
shower
great.
every
Yeah.
shower, like yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, Um and the accompanying imagination, is the integration of all my philosophical work, all of the Heidegger type, Conrad Martius, and like the like Sir Thomas Heath talking about Aristotle on number and everything, and then all this stuff, of course,
Yes.
like Lily was using
Lily.
laws of form. So this is like a new like for me at least, the sense of it is this is like the deeply ultimate mystical mathematics, or profound, the Plathematics is it's the same thing. we,
And
we
the
made this.
Christian mystic you mentioned was
Yeah, Conrad Martius, Hedvig Conrad Martius. Her
Right.
work is not translated into English
Oh, it's
very
not.
well.
Not.
They just started. There's so here's a book that came out in 2020. And with the Society for Phenomenology of Religious Experience, SOPHIR, which is also kind of sphere,
Yeah,
I did this multi-episode series, the webinar for SOPHIR, where
that's
we were
great.
with James Hart and as well Rodney Parker joined
Ah,
us for a number of the sessions. So we went into Hedvig Conrad Martius. So that's
beautiful.
her. It's hyphenated, Conrad Martius. Um, and then finally, I'm like listening to Martin Ball and everything, just constantly. And I put the other car in the shop, so I dropped my wife off at Stony Brook, and I'm driving down. I'm listening to you, and maybe I'm like
Is that how
rewatching a
you
ball.
find me, through Martin?
I heard you mention
Okay.
Port Jeff, and then I was like, huh, it all clicked. I called Ron Joe's and I said, "This is the amazing Randy."
That's
And
what
then
he told me. And I said, Ranjo, Randy died during
yeah,
COVID. And he's
right.
like, yeah, but he didn't know how to tell me. He's like, Randy called the shop. And then he said he spelled it Randi, and then he spelled it Randy, and said how wonderful you were and what a great guy, and he's going to contact you. So, but so you did call as the amazing Randy,
Yeah, yeah. And
right?
because it hit me, everything occurred. I was like,
Yeah.
James Plath is connected with these guys for sure. You know, my sensei used to go to the Ron
Which I
Joe's for his
almost went to, and Ranjo loved that guy, loved that
yeah.
place. Yeah.
Yeah. Sensei's still operating out of Ridge, but yeah, there was this school for years. It was like legendary, and in the like
Yes.
mixed martial art communities, it's like they build the legend of it as
I
well.
was
They're like,
this close.
no way.
This close.
Yeah, I know. And yeah. So anyway, then
So you
I was
dropped your wife off at Stony Brook.
yeah, and I heard you mention Port Jeff, and I was like, aha! And I'm like, I called. I'm driving down south, and I'm like passing Ron Joe's, and I'm like, ah, dude. And I was listening
Ah,
to this.
there he is.
Yeah, I was listening to you interview my professor Simon Critchley at the New School. One of my professors.
Yes.
Actually, I never took a class with him, but I know
But
him. I
you're
talked to
there.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I used to
and
sit in with him, and then we'd go to a restaurant called Spain. I don't know if you know, in
oh,
Manhattan, not far from the New School. We'd all walk over, and I would do magic, and I was such a atheist, skeptic, Randy guy, and
yeah,
but Simon loved it, and we would talk, and I was starting to change a little because he was changing, and he came, he's writing about Marguerite Porete, this beautiful mystic who is talking about hacking and hewing a space inside yourself to let this pure imagination or God enter you, and clear a space, and I'm like, what is Simon talking about? And we're starting to both move that way, and then Cornel West comes in and he blows the door. Like Simon would give a talk at the New School on death. And of course, Simon's a genius of death and he could talk about it all day. But when Cornell got up, Simon was reading a little bit. Cornell got up, no paper, no nothing, and just blew the room up talking about mysticism and love and what we're talking about out of his heart, just it was amazing. And I'm saying, what does he have that we don't have? He has something. We're too skeptical. There's something. And and then Paul showed me go within.
yeah, yeah. So I was listening to the podcast, that
Yeah.
you did last week, 6 days
Yeah.
ago, 7 days ago, about Simon Critchley with Simon. And I got the book. I'm
Yeah.
reading it. I'm getting through it, and I thought that was like so wild, and yeah. So anyways, so that was kind of like the story of like how I got on the Plath, how I found you, and thanks to this, this introduction and this podcast, I bought all your books. I'm like, oh my God, this is totally the
Amazing.
gospel, you know. I mean, after the Thinking the Float Tank, we went to the Goetheanum. We rented a little BMW, and I had my uncle at the wheel. He's a psychotherapist, a Jungian psychotherapist, but he grew up in Berlin. So he loves cars and he used to race, so I put him behind the wheel.
Yeah.
I brought my mother out to England, to the Netherlands, for the event as well. She,
Incredible.
she did Toad, right, and she got to share that experience because we were talking about psychedelics at the conference, and so she's in the back seat, I'm in the passenger seat. Uncle Tim's at the wheel. We went through the Netherlands, we went into through Germany, and we went to Hedwig Conrad Martius's Sacred Places, and Edith Stein. She's the godmother of Edith Stein. Edith Stein, Saint Benedicta of the Cross, a patron saint of Europe, who's now up for Doctor of the Cross, Doctor of the Church. We went to like all the sacred sites with our friend Joaquin Feldes, who's a phenomenologist. He showed us all the sacred sites. I did a little video we put on YouTube. I put it on YouTube. But yeah, and it all comes together. It comes from the Hofstadter type self-referentiality. And
so would Jennifer admit that philosophy is pointing to what we're pointing to? Would she admit it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we talk about this constantly, of course, and I'm like, I was annoying already, in the sense of like provoking the noose, right?
Yes.
The nose, right? Which you talk about in your book, which is so cool.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's all about being annoying. The philosopher provokes the noose,
Yes.
and that's the root of the word annoying, the gadfly, right? Socrates. Yes. Well, I was already annoying. I annoyed all my kids and everyone, picking them up from school, blasting my Led Zeppelin or whatever, saying hey to their friends, But like, then I did the Toad,
Yes. And now you're
infinite, yeah. No,
now you have a mandate. You have a mandate at that point.
I actually, we have the surrender flag raised up front of the house out on the big flagpole, big one. Because I realized, these reactivations, they're not reactivations, they're activations, right? Yeah. Of course, they're this is alive. This is it. It's the infinite life of the infinite life behind life. Yeah, exactly, right.
And doesn't Patrick Grimm live right near you? Does he see the flag?
And guess what? That's right. No, he's actually in Michigan now. He retired, but but my wife and I, when our first child Jenny was born, when Maddie was born, we were staying at Pat Grimm's house. We were house sitting for like the summer and the fall. Yeah. So we actually stayed over here at Toad Hall, is what it's called, his house down here in Patchogue. So we watched his house for a summer and a half. And he's have you been there?
I've been there. I used to go to him and ask him questions about death.
No way.
When I was an atheist, I'd say, what are we... But this is bullshit. Why are we just dying? It doesn't make sense. And he would smile and he'd have his grim belt buckle, and he looked like he looked like right out of the 1800s. Like he'd pull a big old musket out.
Yeah, he's got like a monocle in his vest. Yeah.
Yes, an old bandana to wipe his nose, and he was amazing. And I would always go to him until and then I brought Dennett to Stony Brook. I don't know if you were there back then. You were too little there. It was, I think, 03, 04.
My wife knew Dennett. Well, she was a student of Chalmers, and her best friend who came and taught at Stony Brook for a while, Gabrielle, used to do tennis with Dennett all the time.
That's great.
They're good friends. Yeah.
And Chalmers is Hofstadter's student.
Right.
And invented the hard problem, or coined it.
Right.
It's amazing. It's an amazing.
And at Grimm's in Toad Hall, there's a secret. He's got a secret doorway, a secret bookshelf that there's a certain book you open to the room that we sit in.
Oh, it's great. Randy's house was like that too. He would just do this in the bookshelf, and Ranjo has the same. The bookshelf opens into his office.
Yeah, that's cool.
That last bookshelf to the right, it'll open into the office in the back.
Yeah. So what I realized with all these reactivations, and they call it this in the literature, right? And I realized, no, wait, they're activations. They're absolutely, this is activation.
I like that.
Activation.
Yeah.
Right. Then I realized, wait a minute. It's the opposite of activation. It's surrender, right? It's absolute ultimate surrender. And I started looking this up. There's this instrument of surrender, this idea that can be built into the Constitution. In fact, it's fundamentally built into the Constitution of being, is my suggestion, as an instrument of surrender, one that we can, as the infinite sphere, like where, the myth of Atlas, this idea of like an ancient lost science, of the Prisca Philosophia, it's called, or Prisca Theologica. And this is the same as the Philosophia Perennis, perennial philosophy, a la, not just Huxley, who made it popular in this milieu, but as well like a René Guénon, super deep. He's got a whole, like, so much literature, and there's like a book on the metaphysical principles of the infinitesimal calculus, and that's really the kind of stuff that's at stake with like Spencer Brown and Leibniz and Euclid and the idea of the point, but what my point is, yeah. And in this full immersion, these experiences, I videotaped my own, and I'm just like saying, like, I'm doing the Martin Ball like movements, the spontaneous fractal yoga it's called, and I'm like, or my version of it, right? Spontaneously, and I'm saying like absolutely, absolute, because I'm trying to say the absolute infinite is ultimate reality, and that's all there is the absolute infinite, in my imagination, like in The Simpsons, or whatever, like when they go out drinking, like they think their dance is so beautiful, right? But in reality, they're just buffoons. Well, what I found was, and I studied my videos like they're sacred, things. I made transcripts of every little noise and everything.
Yeah.
Because you're in that state, and this is it. You're God, and you know it, and you're creating the universe and all the universes, So anyway, everything that I've done in my life up to this point, has all been in the service of this. And of course it has. I mean, that's anyone can say that. That's like always true, but as a philosopher who's gravitated to certain things and other things, I'm like, whatever, I don't need the rest of the book. I just want that line, or, I'm just I just need to get on with the work. I don't want to,
that.
Like I want to read certain things cover to cover and have the experience of like, oh man, just like, your book. It's just like, here, I'll show you, like, it's like full.
I loved your notes that you sent. I love, like, I sent to a few friends and they yelled multiple highlighters. They were so excited. Yeah. That it was multiple.
Like right here, like this, I had to write, holy shit, because dude, you're talking about the ultimate reality show. This is like something I've had an idea about the reality genre, and like
Truman Show.
Right. Like the Truman Show you mentioned. Yeah. But like we, that's a mode of revelation, is showing, right? The show, the presentation.
Yeah.
Anschauung, right, is the word for intuition. And it means like the showing, like phenomena is the shining, the appearance. Fichte, for instance, refers to phenomenology and ontology respectively as Scheinungslehre or Erscheinungslehre, the Scheinung, and ontology is the shining, and I'm getting confused. Sometimes I get confused because I'm like looking at the screen,
and then we just forget the words, kick the ladder away, and we're back right in the perfect spot. Yeah. And what's Jennifer's? Yeah. I'm interested in what's Jennifer's. In your pillow talk or wherever you are, and you're bringing this up and you won't shut up because it's the greatest thing ever. What's Jennifer's best refutation, or maybe she doesn't refute it?
Well, it's like the saying and the taking away of like the Leo Gura solipsism issue, kind of thing. There's like a deep meaning going on here. Like the very reason Jennifer and I are together. I mean, in a super deep, super like mystical, magical, like highest sense, what she works on in philosophy, what I work on in philosophy, they're different, but it's a profoundly productive aporia, and that difference, like the two pillars that I referred to earlier, or like matter and spirit, these two are what create that tension, that power, right? And this is what Konrad Martius's philosophy is all about. It's about the radiation of light from spirit and the matter of materiality in a deeper way than we have any knowledge of to this day. The forces of materialism, the dominant forces of materialism that we complain about in modern, critique of modernity. This is something that can be reawakened as well, so that like matter will glow or will be transparent, in this like new age, right?
Yes.
With the rising of the infinite sphere, the revolution of the infinite sphere, and this materiality, or what she calls transcendental concrete, is so
that.
deep,
Oh, I
so
love
heavy.
that. It's
that. Darkness. You can't see it. You don't have an image for it and stuff. So is the Dharmakaya like clear white light. Like, what the hell is clear white light? Isn't it like black too? I mean, and all a rainbow? Like, yeah, in all these different ways. Yeah, absolutely. But like, and it's the transparency of the phenomenological disclosure space that allows for all of these things to be. It's the necessary condition, like the dimensional continuum. It's the necessary condition for the things that exist to exist, right. To have extension. Existence is extension. It's an essence which exceeds its essentiality and actually exists. It comes out of itself just the right amount so that there can be this consistent realm of like a human life, a human consciousness, of any consciousness. Otherwise, it's just chaos. But it's an order, right? It's the right. Cosmos, because of this governing absolute relativity, of the periphery and the center. This relation, this perennial relation, this is it, and this is what defines everything, so that it's pratitya samutpada, the mutually co-arising, interdependent, co-arising of form, right? But all these other forms too, not just appearance, not just the actual universe as actualized, but so much more, infinitely many more, right? Infinitely muchness, right? So that's really the nature of the absolute infinite, is just, yes, let's do this, yes, yeah. It's this pure affirmation. Paul Ricoeur refers to Jean Nabert, the French Fichte, with this philosophy of primary positivity, absolute affirmation, yes. And this is the true meaning of that stuff.
Joy,
the hermeneutics of positivity, joy, yeah. bliss beyond bliss, ecstasy beyond ecstasy, and that's what Conrad Martius's philosophy is all about too, is this ecstasis and this tension of the ecstatic and the instatic. Right. And we talk about like entropy, but there's this other category of ectropy, of like life, and its radiation.
I never heard of that. I like that.
Yeah, I found it like in the anthroposophical literature, buried.
So entropy
in, like,
is everything's winding down and
right.
But what's did you say ectropy?
Ectropy, and of course you could also say extropy. I think I found like a couple forms of it. EC, EK, and EX, the great Kai in the sky of Timaeus, so, I mean, these are like just heuristic devices, they're categories of thought that are ways of describing what's happening here, and we can't just deal with like one aspect of it. It has to all come together in this beautiful, harmonious, ultimately ancient and perennial system that definitely like the aliens are using, if they're awoken to this deal.
And with this alien AI thing that's happening, it's coming fast right now. At the same time, whether the aliens are us or whatever you want to call that, and it's pure imagination or novelty, like McKenna would say, poking through into, showing up and reflecting, and then you have this AI coming really fast.
Right.
At the same time, we're about to go through an evolution or revolution. Right. I'd say in the next 5 years or so.
Yeah. I really like the syncretist Steiner with his anthroposophical framework for describing what's happening, but I also like the syncretism of John Lilly, who and it's not even a syncretism, it's just his like hallucinations on acid, or not hallucinations, like his real hallucinations of these encounters with higher entities, right? These higher entities, higher selves.
It's right? Like Philip K. Dick, he reminds me of also.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. And in fact, I mean, Dick also talks about Lilly here and there as well, I think. Unless I'm confusing all the figures or whatever, but in any case, he calls it the crystalline entity, like in Star Trek, like the what does he call it? Like Lilly has like this name for the particular like enemy alien, of fuck. Anyway,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's like the materialist forces. Steiner would call this air. That's like different from Lucifer, the
Right,
light,
right.
But anyway, these entities, these like borderline entities, or entities that are really coming together, and we can see the effects in like AI or whatever, the spirit of
Yeah,
modernity, or the reason there's a conspiracy that this stuff isn't just absolutely out there. And why aren't people funding philosophy so we can do the great work of
yes,
reaching this constitution with the instrument of surrender fundamentally built into it, so that all the universe could just be pure love, all of humanity, all the nations can agree. I mean, the guy who founded Findhorn Institute, right? That like My Dinner with Andre is all about, like, Andre
it's
Gregory
one of
came
my
back from the
favorite.
Findhorn.
I could
Yeah,
quote the whole movie. We could do a whole
right,
scene whenever you want. You want to
right,
know
right.
my actual response? I used to tell you the truth with that movie at Stony Brook when I was younger than you. I guess 23, maybe 20 something. I would get the movie out of Stony Brook's library, take it and do a double VCR and record it onto and cut out Andre and just keep like I kept them together. But when Andre would go on about like the way you are, cut it out. I cut it out and just I could just listen to Wally Shawn. And then years later, paradigm pop, and I go back to the movie, and Andre is a genius. He's amazing, but I couldn't hear him. I couldn't hear a word, and that's the dilemma I find as a former skeptic. That I'm sure half your students or more. It's just like in the library. As I grew and I could understand now Christianity and the Christian mystics and all the beauty of what they're saying, I noticed that all the younger kids that would shelve the books, the pages that I would talk philosophy and atheism with for years, now I can speak about God, and now they're all atheists, all of them, and none of them understood me. They were all atheists, so I had to change my language. It's all about how do you get to that 18-year-old or 20-year-old very smart philosophy student that is totally secular, totally laughing at biblical bullshit, and we have to get to those people, and that's your job.
Right. Yeah. So it's one of these philosophers, like a friend of Daniel Dennett, right? So Evan Thompson is a current contemporary philosopher. His father is William Irwin Thompson, who founded Findhorn, and I was just trying to find the title of the book. But there's like this fundamental like pamphlet, like a document, like a political pamphlet, where he's proposing like the Blakean and William Blake's anyway, he's got this really cool way of framing like world politics and thinking about like economy and I don't know, agriculture and all of these like things in like systems theoretical terms. But also the question here is like, why can't we just like, share the right way and everything? Of course there's reasons, but the reasons is we're these like, we evolved from like, I don't even believe this really myself. I think that animals are intelligent and stuff, but
Yes.
and they have culture and intelligence and civilization and stuff too of their own. But we're thrown into this world and we're just like scratching over here for resources and here, and this idea is like how the world was built, right?
Right.
But like top down, when we speculate about it, when we use our thinking ability to like come up with the right way, we still then encounter these forces in more refined forms, and then there's like all the conspiracy theory. We don't know what goes on, the intimacy of all these plottings and everything, and what there really is, what people really have, what resources there really are, and everything, So obviously the question is, when will it happen that this breakthrough that people can experience individually will happen for everything? Because then we'll be in a world of world of not just like, yes, let's write fiction, whatever kind you want, just you're manifesting the imagination like that, but let's write reality, right?
Yeah.
And like seriously, make it occur on like a global, national, international like scale. So the trick is that it's always been a struggle. It's always going to be this struggle until, and this is the possibility that we should invest everything in, until we find an even more intuitive and simple, ultra simple is this cool word I found in like Aristotle studies when referring to like the one or something in like, Neoplatonism, ultra simple intuition of this absolutely like never going away, system. And that's what I found in Laws of Form. Okay. And Spencer Brown, he said, it's going to take thousands of years before like a thousand years. He's,
Yeah.
And when we put together the Spencer Brown Society, so Spencer Brown was a friend of mine. I spoke with him, and he's like the great master. He was like, he was also like a tripper, like with all the cyberneticists.
Right.
Stafford Beer was the one who sponsored him writing Laws of Form. Spencer Brown was a student of Russell and Wittgenstein and Whitehead from back then, but he was also like staying at Gordon Pask's house. So Stafford Beer set him up at the famous cybernetician Gordon Pask's house and at Stafford Beer's house. And Spencer Brown was like mostly in the bath, naked, on acid most of the time, complaining that like the floor is fire. Don't step on it. Like that kind of stuff,
And didn't John Lilly he got kind of lost in it too, right? He went very far. Or no, was that?
Yeah. Well, Lilly was in the float tank, he was primarily using acid and ketamine in the tank, which is, super far out. I mean, the K-hole in the tank, on acid. It's like a comedian. That's a joke right there alone, but it's also true, and this is cybernetics. This is the science of world government. It's one way of like fashioning what cybernetics is. Or if you look at Heraclitus, right. And the root meaning of it, it's steersmanship, control. He says like a thunderbolt controls all things, in this like sort of, not mythological, but like in a serious philosophical sense, he means like that spark, that light, this ultimate reality is in control. Right. But then I looked into the deeper meaning of it, and I found, in the sources of the Greek word, there's some precedent to this art of cube spinning, the steersmanship art of the oar. I mean, there's a deep metaphor of the ship and the oar and everything in like Aristotle. It's sort of explicit, but you can go deeper with like these ancient Greeks and etc. But what I found was the root meaning is cube nesting or cube spinning, and it's about the relation of the poles in the infinite sphere to each other and to all things, and to the the equator, the horizon, and how to go from the infinite sphere to the activation of the infinite sphere, such that it's already infinite activation. First of all, I mean, Nicholas of Cusa is all about like all these aspects of the infinite sphere. I mean, this brilliant, amazing stuff. It's like a dialectic of the absolute infinite and the absolute infinite, and it just explodes. But actually, the cube spinning thing, this is the deep meaning of cybernetics, and why it means anything, why it's relevant, why it's interesting and esoteric, is that it has to do with the nature of moving from the absolute infinite framework that is already provided by the infinite sphere itself, and that relation of center to periphery of the sphere itself, the ultimate geometrical thing that defines the nature of the point. Interdependently, this is what gives us the definition, the dihorismos of this infinitesimal point, of which there can be only one, which is always present. It's right here. You can see it. You can't really see it, but you can imagine you can see it. Yes. And then you can see all the lines coming out of it, all the rays, of the here and the now at the center, all these rays emanating from it. So here's how it works. The absolute infinite is ultimate reality. God. Whatever. But the infinitesimal is penultimate reality. And that's the point where the pen of God, you could say, right, strikes the page and makes the actual point. That's the life of it, right? All these dead words, who cares? You can forget about those words. Yeah, the whole point is to remember the words, the symbols, right? But no, it's yeah. So this is penultimate reality. And anti-penultimate reality is everything emanating and everything returning, all those lines of like, of the Neoplatonists, like Proclus, and etc. Anti-penultimate reality. Okay. But if the penultimate reality is the first distinction, then the first extension of the first distinction is exactly the first dimension. And it's not the line like you see, right? It's the being of the line. It's that you are, right? And that's the infinite line, return to Cusa, right? We talked about the infinite line, or return to Aristotle and the whole debate, between Platonism and Aristotelianism, and about the nature of the continuum, so anyway, there's all this stuff that comes from this science as the framework. So there's this ultimate framework that's already here, right? And the question then becomes, how do we go from the absolutely infinite sphere, which is absolutely moving in a circular way that is straight, which is paradoxical, etc., to this, to this conversation we're having in this world embodied and everything. And you have to pass through the moving sphere. So then there's this literature about on the moving sphere and the actual, the places where the risings and settings occur to us phenomenally. This is the ancient meaning of phenomena, is the appearances in the sky of this stuff. So this is called the ancient spherics, all this kind of literature, of which there are many examples in a number of different Greeks. So that's actually what my dissertation is a return to the ancient spherics in such a way that includes everything that, all your favorite possible imaginations about, a cybernetic conspiracy, a la Lilly and everything, can all come together in this mystical science that's always been the Philosophia Perennial and etc. But it's all about that, right? And it's the simplest, most intuitive thing, the framework, and the framework is the mind. And the mind is the proximate framework, the proximate doorway through which one must pass, for things to become real, to have reality, to be existence. So all of this existence, reality, the differences between existence and reality and being, and all of these things are fundamentally the things we work with in metaphysics, in real, deeply integrated metaphysics that includes all the philosophers and comes down to the reconciliation of the experience with the desire to express and share with a partner, with a person, with all of humanity, and this is also where institutions come from, and the shapes of buildings, and societies and borders and all of these things, and everything can go through this incredible revolution with the infinite sphere. It's the only revolution there is.
So this is what you're working on right now, and you're getting close to publishing, or it'll be a few years?
Yeah, I mean, this is the dissertation. I think I should also, now that I have this book series, I could also write it in the form of books. Like one book could just be called The Absolute Infinite is Ultimate Reality, or maybe The Absolute Infinite, or something like this, like what you have here, or the title of Astonishment here, like after coming out of the float tank in The Hague, and then going to we climbed. We took the tram up in the Swiss Alps. It was just astounding. It's another word, same word. It's like wondering versus wonderment, right? Astounding, and so on. And philosophy begins and ends in wonder and is maintained, right? Sustained this in wonder. It's wondrousness, right? But the profundity goes latent. Actually, I should tell you, when I was a teenager, I had T-shirts made that said subjectivity and profundity, because I realized that
great.
Life and love, respectively, life and love, or the spirit and God, these are the fundamental things. And now finally, this is what I remember. This is what I wanted to share with you. This is I was like, okay, all that stuff's important. That's fascinating, interesting, and stuff. But here's what I really want to share. There's a principle of all principles called pure subjectivity. It's the ultimate principle of all principles. I don't care if it's Husserl, who you're using for that formulation, right? It's true. I've checked them all, And then there's this other thing called, which I call the axiom of all axioms, the axiological axiom, the source of all value, meaning, significance, etc. All of aesthetics, semantics, ethics, it all has to do with the foundation of that, right? And those two in relation are necessarily together as the distinction and dimension, or the distinction and dissension, two forms of distinction. But these are like the things, these are the ultimate breadcrumbs that we cultivate in the great work.
And can you just, for fun, bring that to the checkout girl or guy? Like, how do you explain that? You're buying a few things at the store, and she or he says, Randy, what do I do? Give me your advice. And you have
Yeah.
1 minute, and they don't understand
Right.
ontology or philosophy. They just
Well,
want to
with that
not
kind of
suffer
staging, that kind
anymore.
of framework. Yeah, I mean, look, I know you're a magician. You're setting up your sleight of hand situation, right? With a carefully cultivated situation. My hope is that we will achieve what is needed for true universal science. When this fundamental thought starts becoming the way some
As it
people in different
spreads.
disciplines start thinking, well, yeah,
Yeah,
there's this like spreading contagion kind of thing. But once that's happening, what happens is the world changes. Like in order to manifest universal science in the deep sense, in the sense that I'm referring to, you know,
yeah,
it also has to be universal humanity. And so humanity has to come out in us, you know, in a new profound way. And that's the only way to support universal science. That's maybe why we haven't seen it, you know. And but the thing is, can we achieve universal humanity? Can there be peace on earth, in other words?
right,
You
right.
know, I mean, you know, the
Can we
ultimate
hit a
lofty goal.
threshold where maybe, I don't know how many people understand non-duality now? Less than 1%, 5%? I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
love the idea of like,
Can
you know,
it
reaching the
spread?
threshold, you know, and like people, you know, doing the medicine and the like
Yes.
alchemical path, you know, but see, these are all questions about like the way things are. How can we change it? And that's of course where we go. That's like where we think we need to go is right there, you know. And of course, like take this whole like there's people at the cash register. There's like people on the street, right? How do we talk philosophy to the laity, right? The lay persons, the, you know, of us, which like
Yeah.
I watch Beavis and Butthead, you know, like I'm like, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like most people are like, where's the money? It's in the Kardashians' pockets, you know,
Yeah.
like, right. But so we have to go in, you know, and, you know, so it's this new idea of universal humanity. And that's, I think, the real contribution of the dissertation form
Yeah.
of what I'm working on, which is about how this universal science can occur, you know, with the self-constitution being this instrument of surrender so that this humanity, like I'm a regular guy, you know, I watch Beavis and Butthead. I watch myself, you know, I'm
Right.
woke and I have all these kids, you know, I have daughters, I have a wife who's a top feminist, you know, I have to watch like all these shows with toxic masculinity because unfortunately that's where all the psychedelic literature is like happening, right? It's really can be really toxic, you know, but I have to like integrate it all and I have to be a human, a really good one, right? And I hope that like my humanity is something that's coming out when I think this science, this abstract, you know, infinitesimal point, it's like so inhuman, right? Because that's what Jennifer does. Jennifer's philosophy is very much like she works with Lucy Rigoride. It's about a very human kind of thing, you know, it's about touch, the caress, you know, and a potential for changing for the revolution being there, you know, in this human touch. And the thing is, this is also like an aspect of the Hedvig Conrad Martius type thinking too. So, I mean, this material, real, and like even Martin Ball talks about like somatic, you know, embodied, um,
Yes.
you know, embodied energetics, right? Like it's energy and there are these ideas and stuff, but it's somatic, it's embodied, and it is a part of like life in this deeply integrated way. It's the integument of our like flesh, you know, the flesh of the world. So,
Beautiful.
so anyway, you know, I'm working on it. You know, I'm working on the paradigm of the sphere and how like there's enough room in universal ontology, which comes from Conrad Martius for her, there's like the world soul and the world spirit and all of these like fundamental categories, these primordialities that are primordial in the equality of the framework, you know, of absolutely everything. Schlechten alles, she says. You know, she has all these other words for absolutely everything. Like her thing is covering it all, you know?
Yeah.
And of course that's she doesn't go into the absolute infinite. She does go into God, but absolutely everything comes from the absolute infinite. You know, these are so intimate as ideas, as abstract ideas, you know, and they're ultimately the anti-abstract experience or whatever you want to call that, you know. In 2010, I wrote a paper on mysticism that got real popular. Actually, it's been translated and stuff. I published it in the journal for consciousness exploration and research way back in 2010, and I looked at perennialism and anti-perennialism and the literature about the pure mystical event or pure mystical experience, you know, and like what is it and everything. What's the highest state of consciousness, you know? And then finally, here we are. Now I know,
Yeah.
you know. But I also know is also how to blow the ceiling open on speculation. You know, the windows and the doorways are blown open. Conrad Martius says, for instance, you know, all gates are blown open. This is like gates, doorways, windows, but also the floor, right? That the grund that is abgrund, we're used to that one, right? So the floor is gone, the ceiling is, you know, and everything is gone. And all there is the Dharmakaya of the infinite space-time of just pure white light or whatever, you know, and
you can get that, like if I'm just some person that doesn't understand a word you're saying, let's just pretend.
Yeah.
If they take this astonishment medicine, they can understand it in a few hours. They'll know what you're talking about. And then the next day they'll be back in their humdrum, whatever life they're leading, but they're going to start to walk towards what you're saying because like you said earlier, you want to maintain that awe and that wonder because it's a remembering of everything.
Right. Like Spencer Brown became the Buddha. He knew that he was the specific reincarnation of Buddha Sakyamuni. Like he knew this because he had awakened, right? And he used the writing of laws of form. He didn't even know it at the time, but the writing of laws of form was his vehicle to enlightenment. And he achieved that at a certain moment that he writes about in these other books. And that was a vehicle, right? That's the ladder or the raft, right? The raft to the further shore. You know,
right.
And so the raft, the vehicle of philosophy in this deep sense, you know, that is integral philosophy. Not just like Ken Wilber, like, that and everything is referring to Schopenhauer is referring to the Vedas, you know, yes, but it's yours. You know, those guys are myths, you know, like they may be historical entities, but their meaning, their significance, their value, it's you, you're it, you know, like
the same with Jesus, the same with, they always make an idol instead of realizing it's a map to your own heart.
Yeah, this is it. I am the divine entelechy. You are it. This is it. It's happening, you know? But the thing is, we also need to develop this science because there's other goodies. Like the fourth spatial dimension is the next thing we're going into. Jean Gebser has this framework for all of this. This is right, the ever-present origin. This is great. And then also what Gurdjieff and Ouspensky in this thin volume, Samuel McLaughlin explains. I've been giving this to my students as a PDF, and then I was like, you know, now I got the book series, let's publish it.
What's the title? And Feeling Good.
Yeah, on Feeling Good. So this is about you know, an operating manual for human consciousness, right? And finally, it's got a third subtitle. It's all this. Being a discourse on the high states of consciousness in relation to the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensions, with special reference to the possibility of inner development, the value of esoteric knowledge, and the nature of time and immortality. The mouthful, right? But that's true. And the thing is, like the fifth dimension, and this is also you can look at Conrad Martius as talking about this in her own way too. There's the fourth dimension, which is eternity. And then the fifth dimension is like on the other side of eternity, even bigger. And it's all the other possible universes in their like fully created, actual constituted form, like we are, and they're like us, but different by one iota, right? And they're that's the fifth dimension is the fulfillment of all these other possible universes. But that's still in relation to this universe, the indexical universe, this reality, right? This life. And actually, there's more, right? So the fifth dimension is this. And then if we want to continue with this idea of dimensions, it's that there are these different levels of actualization of possibility. And you can have infinitely many possibilities, right? So the actualization can then, you know, take up the nature of number, the numerousness, the supernumerary nature of numbering, you know, from the one. And so like Lily said that said that Spencer Brown's book was a guidebook into other universes at the Esalen Institute conference, and Spencer Brown corrected him. He said, no, it's a way of coming back to this one. And he meant like this indexical universe, this re-entry of the form into itself, this autopoiesis, this entelechy, this ontopoiesis, whatever you want to call this, right? It's a way of this, the way of this, because that all is true. Like the absolute infinite, or for Spencer Brown, it was shunyata, the void, right? Beyond the four winds, nirvana, right? And that experience is knowing that there is only shunyata. There is what Jakob Boehme called das Nichts, the nothing, right? But it's this fullness, right? This overwhelmingness, right? Can't even grasp itself. And so pure self-reference, pure self-grasping the self, the Kaivalyam Parusha, the highest self, in its aloneness. This is an abstraction, yes, but it is the seer. It is the spirit which animates us, the source of all light, and to which everything returns as the darkness as well, like the heaviness of this transcendental concrete. You could separate those, Right. I mean, you can do whatever you want, right? I mean, these are all heuristic devices, and some of them are useful, for accomplishing this work, for spelling it out, for laying out the system, and there have been many attempts, systems, just like systems of institutions of humans, struggling here and there, and that's the system, right? But no, like from within, there's this purity, and when you go silent, when Blabbermouth Randy, who can't shut up with his Jnana Yoga path of intellectual like speaking and saying what it is,
right.
goes and meditates finally. Yes. Then poof, you're welcome.
And you go from knowing to being.
Yeah.
To just being.
Yeah. Yeah, because you could call it like from nothing to nothing. The first distinction between nothing and nothing, or from the absolute infinite and the absolute infinite, right? Or from the absolute infinite to the finite, right? It has to go through the infinitesimal, to the finite, or however you want to describe it. This is the immanent science, Everything goes through the infinitesimal. So the spirit, which is oneness, unity, pure unicity, has to pass through. And it's also the seer. And it's the amethecticon, the unparticipated participant. But in that agency, it is also the will. It is also yourself and your part in the whole. Your participation is exactly that, and this is it. This is what we're doing. And if we stop and silence it, all that framework is like astonishment will just like build, in its suspense, right? And that
Beautiful.
That tension of suspension that holds everything open. It's all held on this one thing, this one point. It's always holding it all together. Otherwise, poof. And maybe that's
the way you stop is all right. Obviously, the medicines will dissolve all that extra, and you'll see. Also, do you do a little meditation now, or maybe you find yourself in meditation without even trying, or quiet? I think all philosophers have to have stillness and quiet in order to let this,
Right. Well, because aren't these things the things of faith, the things that we're talking about? Call it God, sure, but also if it's the absolute infinite, and it's just like this philosophical entity, the absolute infinite, right? Or also the infinitesimal, right? However you want to describe these things, these categories, they are ever present. And so positing them, which is required for thinking about them, right? Or even mentioning them, requires at least the hypothesis of them. These things, which are the ultimate hypostases, right? And ecstasy as well. All these states of being are fundamentally beyond being, right? I mean, that's ultimately what this is about, is the relationship between beingness, and the absolute infinite, right? Yes. The beyond of being. Epikeneia tesousias. Epikeneia.
It's like Plato's. It's like a homecoming from this to that ecstatic state of pure joy, pure bliss.
Because we know it, right? Yeah. As you say, like in the heart, right? And it's the heart is home, and it's home, right? And
all those cliches are true.
Yeah.
like I laughed at it because you, as a writer, you don't want to write cliches, and then you
Right.
see it and you say, "Oh my God, they're all true," but then they become refrigerator magnets to us, and we start to not,
Right.
you put it on the refrigerator, you think you're going to
Yeah.
remember, and then it becomes part of
Right.
the wallpaper.
Yeah, well, they're the Mahavakyas, the great sayings, and they are the ultimate memes, right? Because they're the
Yes.
ultimate demonic, iconic, mnemonic devices, right?
Yeah.
These are the ultimate icons. They're not just ideas, they're images for our
Yeah.
imagination. And I do, as a philosopher, try to be like less, or try to find a different way of expressing it sometimes if I have that freedom in my writing, to be less oculocentric or whatever. But it's what Emerson calls the eyeball, the
Yes.
eyeball of the
Yes.
eye, right? I am
Yeah.
Randy the eyeball. That's like what it's all about in a way. I mean, there's feeling and even just like having had that experience, it's like a taste or a smell.
Yeah.
You remember everything from this, so that's non-oculo visual centric,
Yeah. It's like a
but
perfume you smell that it's like grandma's lasagna that when you were a child and that smell, it's that
right,
smell of home and
Proustian Madeline.
yeah, there's no place like home. Did you ever read The Way of the Pilgrim?
I think I did like long ago, actually.
It was a
I don't know if
Russian peasant who used, he heard of ceaseless prayer and that just lit him up. See, like the way you're
yeah,
talking, like
right.
I'm sure the students hear
Yeah,
this and they're like, yeah, I want that,
yeah.
ceaseless prayer. And,
Ceaseless.
and it's that mantra
Right.
over and over, and you throw it.
Yeah.
For him, it was Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. But it could be I'm one with the Force, and the Force is with me, like in Star Wars or whatever. Anything to throw a monkey wrench into that active mind and bring you
Yeah.
to what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, that emptiness of the fourth state, the Turiya after the A, the U, and
Yes.
the M, or after the three M's of maintenance in the middle, and sustaining, in between all of that interstate stuff, there's the unmarked state
I
that
love
Spencer Brown calls
unmarked.
it.
That's
Yeah,
great.
and he uses no
Unmarked.
symbol at all, and
No
I think
symbol. It's great.
right. And this is also something that Peirce was doing, Charles Saunders Peirce, with his
Yeah.
existential graphs and alpha graphs and so on, utilizing the absence of something, as this,
Yes.
state of being or existence in his case, in these graphs,
I love that. Last night I was trying to think of an image to go with, like, if I could post on Facebook a line that would, whoever read it would go right home, like quick, fat. And the image that I came up with, it reminded me of what you just said. It's just an empty chair in a room, like with light coming in, just an empty chair. And so taking away everything that we're used to, there's nothing sexy about it. It's an empty chair. You're not in it. There's no one there. There's a little light. And then give just the right line to a gem to get you back. I don't know if it's a waste of
yeah,
time,
it's
but
an
it's just an
invitation.
idea. Yeah, an
It's the
invitation.
throne. It's the divine throne, and like it's the assumption of the throne. It's the suggestion of the throne. And this throne is also thrownness in Heidegger's sense. All of these things that are just here before us, right? They have
Yeah,
this thrownness in the sense of like they're just there, like the infinitely many infinitesimals. It's supposed to be just there, a pre-given manifold, but that's not tight. That's not the ultimate economy, you see. It's there's only one, and then you can have your like mirror box infinity of all of them, sure, but the nature of the one is different in its aloneness, that like kaivalyam of the Yoga Sutras or whatever,
right.
that's different than all these things. So there's like I am God, right? And that's different from I am spirit, and that's different from I am, the whole host of the hierarchy of the higher selves, before I'm me, but I'm also me, and
Yeah,
I, having consciousness of that, like go to the center point and look down and be like, oh, I could see all the way, because that's the tube through which the YouTube, right? That's the YouTube, really. That's the ultimate rabbit hole, is
yeah,
you are on YouTube right now having this experience, probably, right? And you're looking through this hole of that, everything has to line up so you can see
yeah.
something. There has to be a conspiracy maintaining that particular type of alignment for your species as a human, to have this human experience. You know, the grass is alive, the trees are alive. There's a whole, bigger Earth that, that we don't know about, and all these other
Right.
planets. And, it's not all just black space, like we think very anthropocentrically, and all the grand united theories, all the theories of everything. These are all coming from this like materialist position. I mean, not all of them for sure, but they need to like really tap into that fundamental things. Sometimes they call it fundamental theory or whatever, but they need to reconcile that with like fundamental ontology a la Heidegger, and find its limits, find its problems, and then bump over to Konrad Martius with the universal ontology, because it's not just about being in time, it's about eternity and the absolute infinite, eternity and God. These are the things that Heidegger was missing, right? In this kind of articulation of this stuff. And it's not that she was articulating the ultimate philosophy of the infinite sphere either, but she was doing this universal ontology of absolutely everything. Okay. And so that actually works as well with Spencer Brown. He called it shunyata, and I'm calling it the absolute infinite. They're the same thing, but the point is, that's it.
Yeah.
Conversation, you have loss of reference, will reefer madness, you're like, what are we talking about? The point, let's go back to the point. This is the cosmic centering device. You can use mandalas, yantras, yantras and song and dance and everything, or all the asymmetries of ordinary consciousness, but it's always there. It's always this thing. And so it's simply just get sensitized to it, have this, like you call it faith or imagination or hypothesis, and there it is. And it's something that you can adopt externally, prosthetically in the beginning, but then you find it was never a prosthesis. It was never super added, in this really redundant sense, reduplication. No, it's already the way things are, and so we just get sensitive to our skin. And that is this, call it the garb of ideas, as Husserl does, etc. But it's this being that we are, and it has this fundamental relation of not only of derivation and progress, genesis of its own, but how about the original? These ideas of the Big Bang and all this,
Yeah.
like the cosmogony, that dimension is missing from our everyday life just because God is dead. And that whole divine is missing, right? And so for it to all return, it has to all return at once as the ultimate real return of all this stuff in a way that's never, returned. It's never been here. Okay, like all of the myths and everything, and the idea of like a mythical immersion, we were immersed before, like, yeah, in some respects, sure, that's a great way of describing it. We're immersed in our lives here and now,
Right.
but we need to be struck with the divine, and then it opens up. Then there are more possibilities that I can't go and talk to my neighbors about right now. Like, like I can, but we can't bring it about. It's not going to make me like suddenly be able to like buy a house and I'm going to shape it like the Goetheanum or whatever. But, I mean, like these visions I have of like what can be after this, absolute infinite philosophy really strikes, and starts changing all the different sciences and stuff. It's just a matter of like brushing everything away, like the shamanic dissolution of the body and the world and life and everything, it's already there in our activity, in our daily life. The brushing, it's always happening. The sweeping away, the washing and everything. The purity is there. It's staring us in the face.
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
Next to,
There's
yes,
another one.
absolutely proximate, absolutely intimate. Yes,
Yeah.
right. Purificatio.
Do you ever have a skeptical student that says, bullshit, Professor Dible?
Well, I could, see it on faces.
Yeah.
Right. I get the sense of certain people being like totally down. Everyone goes back to their ordinary lives as soon as this class is over. But I use it. I often teach intro to philosophy, like invitation to philosophy, where I get to like cover everything. But another one that I've been doing lately is because the university makes me do it, is the critical thinking one. And so
Right.
my angle is it's basically the same as Intro to Philosophy, but it's called the art of thinking, and the idea is to
Right.
think outside the box, right? So
Yeah.
I start by introducing some puzzles, including the like 9 dots one,
Yeah.
9 equally spaced
Yeah.
dots. How do you do it, right? And you have to think outside the box, literally, to solve the puzzle. So this is emblematic, and then we go into the tetractys, which is 10 dots, and then we get really
Right.
deep, and finally it's all about the 1 dot, the one
Ah,
point, right? So the class is really about like different dimensions. We're talking about the box of the room that we're in,
that's good.
but we want to think outside the box, quite literally, with different dimensions. Like what is all this literature about different dimensions, like Flatland, right? Famous,
Yes.
amazing book, Flatland. It even has all these like really deep, like a play within a play kind
Yeah.
of thing, like in Shakespeare, but a dream within a dream of
Beautiful.
Pointland. And the guy in Pointland is the king of Pointland. And it's kind of like the issue of at this deep, deep framework of a dream within a dream kind of thing, of solipsism in the like Leo Gura videos, like this question of like, okay, yeah, all is one and one is all, like we learn at the end of Stairway to Heaven, right? And to be a rock and not to roll, you know, and she's buying the Stairway of Heaven to heaven, right? But there's that, and we can realize that by reading Aldous Huxley's The Perennial Philosophy, or having these experiences and stuff, but just remembering them and referring to them as these experiences, like with the medicine or whatever. But then when we really are activated, we're like, oh wow, I forgot, like, oh,
Yeah.
it's so obvious, and I've latched on to certain ways of framing it so that, yeah, I know in real life, how it is, but it's not until you're actually there, because then you have the infinite freedom to spread out, just like I could spread out in the third dimension here, or the fourth, or the Minkowski-Einstein space-time continuum. I can move my body in time like this in this
Right.
box, but there's enough room in the infinite for really stretching out. In fact, you're already there where you're stretching to,
Yes.
right? So it's also kind of like not moving, but it's infinite moving, and it's, as you described, infinite space. How could you be space? That's not like being the point, How could you be space? But that's what you are, right? So it's kind of like an infinite dimensional continuum. So why even call it a dimensional continuum? Like, why not just call it the infinite, the absolute infinite? Why does it have to be a sphere? And why also infinitely many dimensions, which is another, like, these are all different ways of describing it, But that's because everything that we do down here can be repurposed, which is like James Guy's idea in this book, right? Repurposing all the Lily calls it the solid state entity. That's what it is. Okay, like the AI and everything, the materialism, what Steiner calls Ahriman, right? The force of materiality, or of the earth. Whereas like Lucifer is like the light, the intelligence that just like it burns us out, But these are like forces that we balance in this play of opposites, this enantiodromia, a term from Jung, but also Heraclitus, and really it means the opposites, the opposite poles of the infinite sphere. And here's the truth of the ultimate way that it connects with everything, and it's a politics. This is the politics of the infinite sphere, of the poles. We are each these contradictory poles, these opposite poles. Polis, the people, right? The police, the people are, in the broad sense, polis, verus, truly, verus polas, right? The people truly are these poles. And this is the old idea behind the idea of like cosmopolitanism and cosmology and cosmogony, right? And this is what we want to see, like, spelled out in a whole skeletal structure and given flesh, the integument of the integrity of the integral philosophy, and then we can occupy these bodies in a way, and our minds, right, and in these souls, not just by having the psychedelic mind exploding, mind manifesting, marble losing experience, but we find the great marball of the all, and I mean
Beautiful.
Martin. No, I also mean Martin Ball. But I mean the
Yes.
infinite sphere, of course, yeah,
Yes. And I
So
don't
so
know if you probably read Strange Loop by Doug Hofstadter. Did you read it?
it's like it's like
Oh,
right here.
right
Oh no,
above you.
the mind's eye is right here, and yeah,
Yes. In it, he talks about an elusive marble, which is funny
yeah,
when you're where he's reaching in a drawer. He's not looking. He's reaching for a marble, and it's the paper in the drawer that's making it feel like there's a marble, but there's no marble. So then he's insert and he does this whole thing and he compares that to the eye, and
yeah.
it's an elusive marble. But you're talking about this isn't. I mean, it appears to be elusive, but it's very real and it's your true nature. I like
Right.
that difference
And
there.
and the point is to invite it, right? Like all of like
Yes,
ritual magic and stuff is about preparing through purification the vessel so that you know
yes,
and if you want to have the breakthrough experience, you got to be a prepared vessel too, because
yes,
God's not going to inhabit your body if you're like, you know, hung up on something, and you reject it, right?
yeah,
But if you surrender, right?
yes. So you're talking. You need intent. You're giving up, and you're saying, I give up. I surrender. Wave your flag and set the stage, and just that intent will invite this to be
Yeah,
closer.
an intent that is no intent, right? The actionless action, like you refer to like way, right? Or the
Yes,
woo, right? Or karma, a karman, which is a central concept in the Bhagavad Gita. You know, uh,
yes,
actionless action, or like the Dvaitya Advaitya tattva of like those guys, right? Like the Hare Krishnas, ISKCON.
right. That's why they
It's
always say, don't
duality, non-duality.
grasp. It's got to be like you're
Yeah.
saying,
So what I like
non-grasp.
the Greek. There's a Greek word, apeiron, right? It's the beginning of philosophy. Thales says everything is water. He falls in a well, and like, and this is like a joke that Aristophanes writes in a play called The Clouds. He's making fun of like the philosophers have their head in the clouds, right?
Right.
But this laughter of the Thracian woman who finds him when she's like fetching some water at the well, like this is also the demonic hyperbole of Glaucon when Socrates announces that the form of the good is beyond being, and it's this like this accompaniment of revelation with this laughter or this like intensity, this hyperbole. And so the word at the beginning is actually not coming from Thales. For him it's hudros. Husis, or the nature of everything, is hudros, is this water, like, super fluid, like God pouring God into God, perhaps, right? But
Right.
it's his student Anaximander who says that the arche, the beginning, or the principle, or whatever, is a pyrrhon, the infinite, right? And the infinite is, in this formulation, the alpha privative peros, a pyrrhon, just like our infinite. But peros, the limit, is like the one. And so there's this like deep sense for this word pyrrhon, so that like ontology or philosophy in this deep sense, ontology is ultimately a pyrrhontology. And it's this seeing through the peering out through the aperture of the
Yes.
apeiron, which is not some tube, not some thing, but it can be, and it's absolutely everything, right? So there's this apeirontology, and like I'm a student of Ed Casey, and he's all about this periontology and the peros, in this like human, like existential, like lived sense. He's very like, his philosophy is very much about like borders and it's very human. And he's looking to like heal humanity. What's the future like,
Yeah.
for like, how do you talk to the counter lady or
Right.
whatever you want to, the students, but the thing is, like, we look within, and that's where, this the seeing is happening. So this apeirontology is totally integrated with itself. So the system is super, you know, economic, and it allows for everything that could possibly be, and
Right.
that
Right.
includes this in particular, right? And so, I mean, it's like a way of knowing, a way of understanding, and so it requires like the faith of like just assuming there are certain things like an infinite sphere or a center of the infinite sphere, stuff like that,
See, I
And so that
couldn't
kind of
assume
like
that as a
faith,
skeptic. For some reason, I couldn't assume. I only saw the void, and what was in front of me. The crude matter, just regular matter, and the void scared me.
Right.
And
Yep.
I said, there's nothing. And so I was right that there wasn't a separate God.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good thing. But
Right.
that's why I think a lot of atheists or secular can come to this, because they already got rid of the notion that God is far away. So that's good, because you're saying it's immediate. It's right
Mm-hmm.
here. It's really
Absolutely.
closer to you than you. It's you. It's the true
Right.
you. So
Yeah.
beautiful.
And not only it, the this is it, the ultimate absolute it, but
Yeah.
also the penultimate and the anti-penultimate, and etc. You're the tube of all the things. And so there's a presence of all of them. And so the system, the framework of the infinite sphere, like as a universal ontology, it's an intuitive system. It's easy. It's not like Heidegger where you got to learn all your isms, and it's actually, I don't know, maybe it's hard from the outside, or I'm using big words, but
Yeah, we need the simple. Like Kerouac said, one day I'll find the right words and they'll be simple, but it's so hard to contain this in words. You're doing a good job with a lot of words, but it's not easy. It's right. Do you in your editing try to strip away and as you're writing?
Actually, now, no. I used to all these years, but now I'm like, forget it.
Yeah.
This dissertation I'm writing,
You're having fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it should be fun.
It should be fun. That's why I read Hofstadter for the joy. I could feel it coming out of that writing. There was so much zest, and he would say vim and vigor and zest and fun, the dialogues and that's attracted me, because that's what we really are, is that joy. So I would say keep it in there, but sometimes all the words you see in my books, that I'm having sometimes too much fun, and maybe at the expense of the person reading it. I don't know,
No, I think it's really effective. Like, I was looking in this one, and I saw you had these letters.
Right.
Let that sink in.
Yeah. The topography,
all devices.
Yeah.
Whatever, anything that works. It's guerrilla warfare for enlightenment.
Yeah. Kitchen sink, all of it.
We should probably wrap it up, but this is incredible. I mean,
this is just the beginning. Just the beginning, and I'm glad you're here for this next 5 years of AI insanity and whatever's coming. I'm going to watch, and we're going to watch your thesis come to fruition, and that's just the starting point. I think who knows what's coming out of you.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you, Randy, so much.
Thank you.
I can't believe we just met. It's like we've known each other forever. Plus, it's going to be brand new.
Yeah. Thank you.